Hey y'all, it's me again, Joey.
Well, ready to let them loose?
Yep, that's it. Let's see if they make us run.
Oh,
Probably so.
yeah, that one tried to get after him, but other than that, what can you expect? I mean, can you blame them? Oh yeah, they're getting after us now. Go, Joey, go!
Hey man!
Hey, man, buddy. I'm gonna get in the truck. You gotta go back and get your camera.
So
But also, just get as many as you can off the one next to it. Get out.
You gotta move away.
Do that side again. Y'all ready? Let's get started. Hey everybody. Look at what y'all got. Hey, good to see everybody over in the chat.
You got
See
some
Russell just popped in.
sitting up, I'm tired. This is
Y'all-
my head
Y'all
together.
made it. Y'all made it in time this time, didn't you?
That's right.
Yeah,
Well, that's good. How y'all doing?
We're tired.
let me see your
Tired?
pictures.
Kinda.
I would think so.
You know, you never sleep as good as you do within your own, unless you're in your own bed.
Yeah. See Brian Flower Seat. Hey. I've got where I have a time trying to keep up with these chats over here. I'm just gonna say, hey everybody. I'm gonna keep saying, hey everybody. Well, what y'all been up to? I know y'all been busy.
Yes.
How'd it go?
Actually, everything went pretty well. Melissa and I came over to, I guess it kind of like Middle Illinois. I guess it'd be Springfield, Illinois, for their Illinois State Beekeeping Conference. And we got over here Thursday night, I guess. Well, you've seen us there.
Yeah.
And we had the whole honey show training council thing that Brett's English puts on. That was all day on Friday. And then we got out of that in the evening and had dinner with this fella down below me right here. There, a guy. Because he came. And then today was the state conference, was a one-day conference, and they had Jamie Ellis speak. He gave 3 presentations, which were phenomenal, and then Bob Benny gave 2 presentations, which were equally as phenomenal. So, unfortunately, JW had to leave and go home because his furry buddy needed his attention.
I should have stayed. My football team got trounced. Trounced.
Did they? Yeah. Well, hey, you could have taken us out to dinner somewhere. We just ate Steak and Shake, which wasn't that good.
I wonder why.
Sorry, my voice is not quite 100%.
I'll tell you what, he does. He talks nonstop for 12 hours a week.
JW says that I'm politicking, but I'm just making friendly conversations with folks.
He's politicking, Joey, don't
Look, back when I was in school, we used to go to some family reunions, and there was one lady there that she talked. That woman, she just like this all the time. And about 2 hours in, or hour and a half into that reunion, she's talking like this. She can't even hardly get her voice come out. She still ain't locking that mouth up. She gets plumb hoarse.
Yeah. It's a good time here, though. It really was. I think Illinois does a really good job. Much like, well, I can't speak toward Louisiana State Conference because we didn't go to that, but the Be Alive one, we were at last year was really good. And honestly, we kind of thought about coming to the Louisiana State one just to visit with you all down there and stuff, but we decided we needed to get some stuff done around here. So, but I'm sure the Louisiana State one is pretty phenomenal too. It always gives us good ideas of what to do, in St. Louis to make things that much better,
Yeah.
Seeing what people do, seeing what people like, what they respond to, the speakers they want to see, maybe the topics that are good or maybe not as valuable to some folks. And, just try to do your best job to be accommodating to people and also the education factor too.
Well, I guess JW's been there too, so I guess he hadn't done much beekeeping.
Oh, yeah, I have. I don't just go up there and camp out like the Stockmans do. I don't have that kind of money.
No.
I worked bees yesterday.
Did you? Okay.
Drove up there and honky tonked all night.
What'd you do in the bee
Hit
yard?
every bar in that town. Danced with all the girls in town.
Huh.
Talked bees all day. Well, I was kind of in the background to hold him up when I figured he's going to need artificial respiration because he'd get windless. He was talking so much, run out of wind.
So you're up there to back me up, right?
Sir, yeah, I was just way back. I was way back.
Yeah. I figured he had my close back, I turn around and he's already gone. He left. I mean, what the heck?
Left without his cut comb too.
Yeah.
That was
I
right.
like that one.
Yeah.
So what'd you do to your bees, JW? Anything?
Yeah, I've given my last fourth round of oxalic acid, and I'm building. I built sugar shims or sugar, boards. I need a few more of them, so that's what I worked on in my shop about all week this week in my spare time. So I think I'm in pretty good shape. I'm going to get my mentor out here, and he's going to go through all my bees for me and find all my queens for me, make sure everything's in good shape. That's being Mr. Sonny there. He's been coming up. He brought me some sugar, some cheap sugar. That was pretty nice of him, I thought.
Well, that's a plus.
Yes.
But he skinned me out of 2 or 3 things while he done it. So I guess we're about even.
Hey, so I'm just curious, what did I skin you out of? Can you give me?
I'm not going to do that in public. We're going to keep that private.
Oh, no. Hey, it's okay. I'm allowing you permission to do it. I want to hear this.
Well, I mean, he did
Call me out.
He did pay me for all that cut comb that he didn't take home with him.
That's right. He did.
That's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was surely blue.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Now Tom's got to come out and visit you to bring it to you.
That's right.
Well, that's
You
good.
just
That's
really
good.
messed
He
up.
thinks he's hard now. Wait till if I get done with him out here.
Mhm.
I've been I hadn't really been in any beehives since the last time I've been on the chat. But I've been noticing a lot of bees having to protect that entrance. The last 2 or 3 weeks have been, I know I said that last week, but still just having to watch them
I actually went through
They
the
garden them, but they check. You know, every hive has somebody come by and check them.
Yeah,
You can see them knock them off the front.
I went through that about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, Joey. How that's, mine seem to be, they've calmed down pretty good now. But
That's why.
I'm trapping varmints too still. I'm back at that again. I caught, what I catch this week. I caught 2 possums, 1 coon, I guess. It was all I caught this week. But I closed my live traps up. I didn't want an animal in there while I was up there, yesterday. So.
Yeah.
And today, so I'll probably reset them tomorrow. They had my bees stirred up. The varmints did. In 10 days, I caught 2 skunks and 2 of my barn cats, which they're just around all the time. They didn't bother the bees, but I got 2 skunks and 2 barn cats, and 3 coons and 2 possums, I think. So.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
I'm back in trapping mode again. Well, I've got so doggone many varmints around. They just, my bees are only pretty calm, and they had them pretty feisty actually. And that it was those. I think it was those skunks, because I'd see where they was digging for grubs also. While they digging in the honey hives.
You might have to put your electric fence around them things.
Lord, I'd have
They're
to
too scattered out, huh?
I'd have to, yeah, I'm too scattered out. I'd have to fence off the world. I've got plenty of a fence up, believe it or not, but it's not electrified.
Yeah.
I used to. It's all.
Did you even get in the bees this week before we came down here?
No, I did not. No.
So the beginning of my whole week was busy prepping for that honey show that we did.
Yeah.
And I sent Lee some pictures of the results so that.
Yeah.
She worked pretty hard on it. I have to give her
He's
props.
working on it. I don't know if he's got it ready or not.
I don't know.
Feel like he's working on it.
Whenever he's ready.
Yeah,
show the results.
I have to give Melissa props. She's worked pretty hard on that this week. And to be honest with you, even the last honey shows, pretty much like most of that is all her doing almost all of that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I worked pretty hard on the honey show too this week, Joey. I had a big
he did actually. Yeah, he did. We made him enter into the honey show
really?
yesterday. So the one category that Melissa and I could not enter, which rightfully so, I agree with this, is we cannot enter because we're Missouri residents. We don't live in Illinois. We cannot enter Missouri honey in the tasting, which is the black jar, in Illinois. So, which again, rightfully so. I don't believe that we should be able to enter in that, but
the best tasting honey from Illinois shouldn't be from Missouri.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. But we made JW enter into it. I went out to his truck and I got the honey out of his truck, brought it in, put the sample in, made him fill out the sheet. He was kicking and screaming like a 3-year-old the entire time, making a spectacle, pretty much. And I just told him he was my grandpa and he has Alzheimer's and he doesn't know what he's doing. And I patted him on the head.
I didn't know. I realized those honey folks was scattered from all over the country like they was. Do they get paid to come there to do that?
The individual judges do not get paid to do that.
Their expenses are nothing, because there was a couple there from the Carolinas and one from Florida, according to that lady.
Virginia.
I believe since we took that honey judging class, which was all day, it's basically is like an introduction to that program. If you want to be part of the
you want to become a
American Honey Training Council,
judges
judging. There's a whole process you have to go through, and it's fairly extensive to do it. You have to put in a lot of time and a lot of volunteer hours and such to get to a judge or even a senior judge, and it would likely take at least a year, if not a couple years.
Jamie spoke on hive beetles.
Yeah, that was the first one. He gave 3 total, Brian.
The queen.
That's
I would
right.
like to hear the high beetle one.
It was pretty good. I only caught the last.
It's like you and JW
Half.
missed 3/4 of that talk
Well,
on the hive beetles.
He was
It was
talking.
really good though.
JW was talking, and he had me tied up outside, so I missed half of it. But the last half that I caught, I did enjoy that.
Let me see, Brian. I'll tell you what they were.
He did a nice one on queen reproduction too, of queens and different ways to go on about that.
Okay,
And
Jamie.
he did introduce the way he introduces nukes for queen replacement. He takes nukes and replaces the queen that way. And I'd never, in my 80 years, ever had seen that process that he explained there.
That was pretty awesome, wasn't it, JW? I was impressed. Melissa and I took some notes, and I took some pictures of some slides. And then, of course, I asked him after we were done. I had to ask him about coming to St. Louis. So we'll see if I can get him out there if his schedule will allow.
So his topics were small hive beetles, recognizing queen events, and then sustainable beekeeping. And then Bob spoke on his comb talk with chemical interactions, and then the chemistry behind processing honey.
Mm-hmm.
All the talks were really good.
Oh, every one of them was phenomenal. Anybody in this chat would have enjoyed any one of those talks.
But more importantly, Lee has my honey show pictures ready.
Gosh.
So let's see what we got.
What are you doing there? Trying to sniff it?
No, Tom's like, you gotta get down closer. I think that was I don't remember. It was green third
That
place.
was the marijuana infused.
So that was for the 6 wax block.
She's how she's giggling.
Then third place for our light extracted honey.
Hey, you want to know? Okay, so this one right here, you want to know why Melissa got that place?
That was the dark.
No, it wasn't. It was the light.
No.
It was the light.
Okay.
Pay attention.
I'll correct you in a second. Go ahead.
I'm going to go on with
correct me because so you know how sometimes on glass, if anybody's ever looked at glass, there are numbers on the glass. And even though the Welsh or the American Honey Trading Council does not count off for minor defects, they will count off for other things. Meaning, if you don't take an alcohol pad and you don't wipe off the numbers that are stamped on glass, because they have to be on there, which usually come off fairly easy, then you can get deductions for it. And I'll tell you what, the senior honey judge, Steve, judged this one, this class, and he took off for it. So Melissa looked around and she's like, well, what, because the nice thing about the American Honey Trading Council is they will list comments in the back as to what was wrong and how to improve on it. So whereas sometimes other honey judges won't give you any comment card back. So that's the beauty about the American Honey Trading Council. And so they looked all over and couldn't find it. And even one of the judges that was originally from St. Louis,
Tim Hyde.
His name's Tim Hyde. He looked on it and he couldn't find it. Then one of the gals comes over and looks at it to see why he counted off, because Steve, the guy who originally judged this, was already gone. And through looking at it and with almost like a magnifying glass, she was able to find it. So rightfully so, it got deducted. So it didn't place because of that.
Well, it placed third place. It didn't place higher because of that. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So anyway, third place for my light extracted honey, second place for my dark extracted honey, and then first place for my candles, Brian.
Yeah, that's the owl ones, Brian.
The tiny owls.
Yeah.
And then first place for my creamed honey.
That should be it.
And I think that's it. Yeah.
That should be it.
So I got 5 ribbons. So that was exciting.
Yep.
And
So
Ronnie wouldn't give me the Beekeeper of the Year award, but I declined it.
He's too modest.
They did give these, so JW and Tom missed it because they were both out politicking, I guess, as JW likes to say. The Beekeeper of the Year award they gave out at the beginning of the show. and one of their members made these really nice. It looks like the front side of a hive box, but he said it wasn't because it was made out of cherry wood.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did like some sort of laser engraving, but did like a laser engraved award for like the front of the box saying like Beekeeper of the Year or whatever it said. But it was really pretty impressive what he did. It was really pretty.
Yeah, there was a lot of good stuff that was entered in there, so it was kind of fun. So if anybody's ever gone to any conferences and have not entered into a honey show, you really should do it just for the experience of it. Honestly, it's definitely requires a little bit of work depending on what class that you go into, but it can be fun for sure.
Yeah, so there were two other things that I entered that I knew weren't going to place, but I entered them just because I know they give you those comment cards to tell you what you can do to improve it, or give you tips and tricks, things like that. So JW is going to get the BS award.
Thank you very much.
If I remember right, talking about Jamie Ellis earlier, first time I heard him talk, and I think I've already said this one time on the live, but he was discussing some research they had done about bees migrating from hive to hive. And he explained what they did to research that. They took, I think it's blue ink, and he had a bunch of guys just sitting there catching bees that's coming out of hives in a certain yard, painting them blue.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone they could catch for a long time. And they started finding them further out and further out. And they finally started finding a bee yard 5 miles away, blue bees coming out of those boxes 5 miles away.
No kidding.
Huh.
I guess what he had figured out was bees traveling to find something to forage on. And instead of coming all the way back home, they'd just come to another hive somewhere and
That's interesting.
dwell there.
And then they're about 5 miles away, huh?
Yep.
Wow.
So that was the first time I ever heard Jamie Ellis speak, and he was a really good presenter.
He really is. He has some good humor in his presentations as well.
Is he coming in the spring?
And he is a good old Georgia boy, Honey King. He was born and raised in Georgia.
Yeah.
I thought so, but maybe we misunderstood one another. I thought you was talking about where he was from, and I guess you thought I was talking about where he taught at.
Yeah, Jamie Ellis did mention his podcast.
Two Bees a podcast.
2 bees in the pod.
I don't know.
2 bees in the pod. 2 bees. What's this podcast again? 2 bees in the pod. I think it is.
Brian said he's going to be at their summer meeting.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, so Brian, I did like I said, I did try to talk to him about coming to St. Louis, so we'll have to see how that works out. But if anybody ever gets a chance to listen to him, even in person, I mean, he has a little bit of humor, and he really is a great presenter, though. Very entertaining, and his information is pretty solid. And the nice thing about it was I've been to listen to presentations before by researchers and such, and sometimes it gets really, really high above your head. I mean, unless you have a thesaurus with you, sometimes things get really deep. But he was presenting to mostly hobbyist beekeepers, and he did a very good job of doing so with some really good content there also. JW, did you listen to a couple of them, didn't you?
Certainly. When you think I just up there to mess around, paying attention.
Thought so. Did you enjoy them?
Certainly did.
Yeah. Do you agree that he was also a really good presenter, like the way he delivers his information?
Yeah, on Jamie, you mean? Well,
Oh,
Bob
yeah.
also. Bob does a nice job. Everybody knows that. Jamie does
That's
a
right.
really nice job.
Yeah, I did
I've
really,
seen him before a couple times.
okay. In person? Oh, I see. Yeah, that was my first experience seeing him in person, but yeah, it was really good one, honestly. I did really enjoy what he did there.
Mhm.
It's a good question, Mark.
Yeah.
What did he ask?
He says, I wonder if bees relay nectar to each other at long distances, just as they do in the hive.
Maybe.
Be curious to know that answer, honestly.
I would say it's possible.
Sure. What do you think, JW, Beekeeper of the Year?
Y'all, we got the link pinned if anybody wants to come in. You're
Frankly, I would kind of be
Oh, yeah.
doubtful. I don't know that. You know, like if they're transferring nectar from one to the other away from the hive, I'm doubtful.
Yeah.
But I don't
mean-
know that. I'm not a researcher of any means.
Yeah.
That's just an opinion now. Just an opinion. Mark, you probably know more about it than I do.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Lee. He says they would probably use nectar to bribe their way into the hive.
Yeah.
I've actually heard people talk about that before. You know, when you talk about drift and fighting and such, I have heard multiple people actually say that they believe that often
Yeah.
if
that's
they
true.
have, if they're coming in, even if they don't belong, if they have something, you know, a gift to bring, they'll be let in. So I don't know. That's just what I've heard before.
Somebody, I forget who it is now. I seen a study someplace on, you know, where they had done some studies on bees, switching hives and so forth, and apparently that's more prevalent than we might imagine. You know.
It's blue. Anything I'd change? No, not really. If the pump ever goes out, I may try to get one a little bit stronger. I went on the cheap with that, but it does what I need it to do. And I made sure I got a pump that it'll actually pull up, like, if I remember right, as shallow as 5/8 of an inch before it grabs air.
How big of a pump is that, Joey?
3/4 horse, I think. But it's
Does that
it's
give
made.
gallons per minute?
I'd have to get the box down and see. I'll grab it down a second. But all pumps aren't created equal. This one's actually designed. It's got I think like an 1.25 inch outlet, but you can actually reduce it down to, like, I think 3/4 of an inch if you want to reduce it down that low. Some pumps you can't do that. You have to leave it pretty much wide. You can reduce down maybe one size, but you can choke this one down. Let me grab that box.
Hey, Melanie. So interestingly enough, there was some. So Bob Benny gives a presentation, and what was that talk specifically on with the honey? I thought this was really cool. So we talked before about your honey and how it almost never crystallizes. And Dennis suspects highly that it's Tupelo. And I'm actually kind of inclined to agree with my
Chemistry
limited.
behind honey processing.
His talk was the chemistry behind honey and processing. So one of the things that he points out in there, and I think I've mentioned it before, but crystallization is affected by the percentage of dextrose or D-glucose. That is that type of sugar that's in the honey itself. So the more or the higher the dextrose sugars that are in it, the faster that it will crystallize. But Tupelo, forgive me, is actually has a very, very low. He lists off Tupelo, black sage, and sourwood. Now, I'm sure there's others, but those were the ones that he knew of off the top of his head that don't crystallize, or it takes a very long time for it to crystallize. So, Dennis mentioned that before about the honey crystallization in there, and that's how Bob explains it specifically. So, again, I thought that was pretty interesting. And whenever he was talking about that, I was thinking about your guys' honey specifically. So, interesting fact, but I'm sorry, Joey, go ahead.
That's okay. All right, this pump is actually a 1 horsepower. Where you at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's
Hold that up a little higher so you can't see that made in China part of it.
what is it?
I said hold it up a
There
little
you
higher so you can't see the made in China part of it.
Oh, you can't do much about that. 1/5 of an inch, whatever that is. That's the maximum depth you can go.
I think that's true, Brad. Your comment there. Glucose,
Yeah.
fructose ratio.
This one will get pretty slow when you do 2 to 1, real heavy. It'll go pretty slow, but it'll still pump it. It'll still get the job done. Just takes a little longer.
Hey, Miss Kimberly, we haven't seen you for a while. Good evening.
Long time no see. So Brad, his slide that he showed said crystallization is affected by the percentage of dextrose, the temperature, and the age. Is what Bob's slide said.
And temperature is a great big factor.
Yeah.
According to his information, I didn't make copies of it, but he had it all. Did you take pictures of it or any of these
Yeah,
we
I
did
took
on
pictures.
slides?
I can send this one to Lee.
So interestingly enough, Little Klondike Outdoors. I've heard this before, but he dove into it a lot deeper when you talk about moisture content. So that's a little bit subjective because you know how we talk about moisture content and just as a standard. I know I've heard this a million times. 18.6. You have to be at 18.6 or below, and that's true. But it's also not. It doesn't just stop there. The amount of yeast that are in particular honey, the higher the yeast content, the faster that it will start to ferment. So you might have to have the yeast, or you might have to have the moisture content even much lower than that 18.6, depending on that type of honey. And he lists off a couple different ones specifically that that were more that were a little more susceptible to fermentation if it wasn't really low. And I can't recall which ones he listed off specifically. I don't know if I got.
What are you responding to? I missed.
I'm sorry, it was a little higher up. I don't know. Joey had it pinned up there for a minute. I don't know which one it was.
What is it?
The comment you just had up there.
Lee might have had that one up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lee. Oh, yeah. How worried are you about moisture content? Little Klondike Outdoors.
Yeah. I mean, personally, ours, we get our moisture down to like 17.6. That's what we bottle at.
Between 17.3 and 17.6.
Yeah.
And we have never had any problems.
There's that crystallization slide from.
That's interesting, Brad. I think it's always, really cool to learn these things. Sometimes they're little subtleties, I guess, but nonetheless, I think they're equally as important. Whenever you're processing honey, storing it, how you store honey. Do you heat it? Do you not heat it? All these little nuances that will affect the quality of what it is that you've got. Shelf life. As it starts to degrade, how does it degrade? How is it stored and all this stuff. I think one thing he points out is that below 52 degrees, let's see, I think it was, I don't know if I had a slide on that one. Below 52 degrees, it stays stable much longer and doesn't degrade. But as the temperature goes up, it can start to degrade over time. I think at one point it was like at 68 degrees, if I remember right, 68 degrees. It's stable for, the half-life of diastase at 68 degrees or 20 Celsius would be 1,000 days. At 122 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 Celsius, it's 14 days. And at 179 degrees Fahrenheit or 80 Celsius, it's only 30 seconds.
I think he has that slide on one of his videos that he has on YouTube too.
Yeah, and that's before it starts to destroy the enzymes. Yeah, Brad, I think he describes that. Pull back to that one slide. It was called dextrose or he refers to it as D-glucose. And I don't know what that specifically means. Maybe a type of glucose. I don't know.
This cream honey ferment. I mean, it'll,
so that's probably where you're coming in at there, Brad.
It'll ferment if you don't get the moisture content correct.
Yeah. Yeah, Brad, we've never really been keenly worried about fermentation either, but for us, it's been a little bit of a trial and error. They say, again, like that rule of thumb says 18.6, which is kind of true, but really it's kind of not, because there are some things that go against that. We've always, not for any specific reason, but like the idea of having down around the 17 to 17 and a half mark ourselves. But I don't know that we have any of these types of nectar sources that have that extremely high yeast, extremely high yeast spore content. Here's a good question, Melissa. You want to answer that?
I already did. You weren't listening. Brad answered it also about the cream honey fermenting.
Oh, I see.
Now, Brad made a comment there concerning fermentation.
Yeah.
If I understood Bob correctly, that's not to be argumentative, but that's not necessarily the case.
Hey, Brad, you should come in here if you can.
Yeah, I was trying to remember how he said that, JW, because he
mentioned the guy that had the cabbage
honey. Yeah,
that's
it was
right.
It was really it was like a 19% moisture content.
No. So Bob gives a story where he got cabbage palm honey.
Yep.
Cabbage palm, I think it is.
Cabbage palm.
And that came out of Florida, and it was one of his friends specifically, and he said it was at 17%. And he said, send him a sample. He got it in. It was really smooth. It was really good. But when he said specifically, he goes, I don't have room in my warehouse right now. He goes, I'll pay for it. If you hold it, I'll take a delivery on that, but not for a month. So I believe he had said approximately a month later, he gets that honey in, and he could immediately tell by the seepage on the top of the barrel that there was something wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
and he got it and opened it up, and I think he got like 18 drums of this stuff. Within a month, this stuff had fermented at 17%.
All for a minute. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, JW, you're correct.
So yeah, and that had to do with like the types of yeast that were in it.
Hey, Brad.
Because those yeast could ferment at a lower, a lower moisture content.
Brad, download your knowledge on us, my friend.
Oh no, there's not much there.
I think you got
So
more
this,
than yourself
my
credit for.
understanding, this moisture content slash fermentation issue has a lot to do with the natural yeasts that
Yeah.
that reside in honey. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? What are you
That's
going to
right.
do when you make mead? You got water, you got honey, and you got yeast, right? And then it ferments. So it's exactly what happens. It's just like wine. You take wine, as I understand, you go to the old country, the old ways of making wine. They take the grapes and crush the grapes, and they naturally ferment by the yeasts that are present on the grapes. Don't add anything. And that's a very rough understanding that I have. I'm no vintner. So I understand that the pasteurization of honey, it kind of is one way that they address that. They can pasteurize the honey and kill the yeasts.
That's right.
In the honey, so then it's not going to ferment, from that source for sure. However, if the yeast ratio and the moisture content are in balance, then the acidity and low moisture content of the honey will prevent the yeast from reproducing. And that's why I say there's no hard and fast rule, because you don't know what the moisture content is. You don't know what the nectar source is, or
That's
you
right.
don't know what the nectar source is, and you don't know what the yeast content is, even if you know what the nectar source is, because I'm sure it can change year to year.
Right.
So
Bob talks about that too, Brad. He
Yeah.
specifically says two things I'll point out. He says the yeast that you would use for making of alcohol, it is not the same yeast that you will find in what causes honey to ferment. And then the second thing he pointed out is, people need to understand that yeast naturally float in the air, just like a dust.
absolutely,
And
that's how
if you
sourdough
leave-
bread is made.
Yeah, if you leave that honey exposed or open, and you enough yeast content is able to get in that honey, it is possible for the fermentation to start. Or
Not only that, but it's hygroscopic, so it's going to absorb any higher atmospheric relative
Yes, sir.
humidity.
And that's even after it's been pasteurized.
Correct. Yeah. After it's been pasteurized, because if the yeast reintroduced to it at a high
Reintroduced.
enough level, then they can.
Yeah, that's my understanding of that. But you're right. Different yeasts making mead. The yeast they're making mead. The principle is the same. People often say, you see on the forums, people say, "Oh, my honey fermented. What do I do?" And then somebody is bound to say, "Well, make mead." Well, that's not the way it works.
That's not
Right.
how
Not
that
gonna-
works.
You're not going to make mead out of that.
That's right. Yep. And I've heard that same knee jerk response, Brad, many of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Put it in your some nice hot water in the summer, and dilute it with water and sugar, and let the bees eat it. In the summer it'll be fine, but don't do it for winter feed. You'll
Yeah.
kill your bees.
You'd probably give them dysentery, wouldn't you?
Oh well, yeah. I see that in my hive. They sit in the hive so long that if the feed isn't cured, it's not capped, it's not dried down and capped. If there's open feed, it'll absorb atmospheric moisture,
Mhm.
and then it ferments, and the bees eat it and they die. Like, it's not just bad for them, it kills them. So it literally makes their guts explode.
Hmm.
And it's a mess to clean up.
Yeah. So Jeff Chesser has a comment on here that I really I could not comment to that very much in an educated manner. All I could do is regurgitate the information that I heard specifically from Bob Benny today.
Well,
And this was his experience, by the way. So I wouldn't have any reason to believe that Bob would ever tell a fable about
Well-
that. But again, I can't comment. There may be something more going on there that I don't understand.
And the honey that Bob had could have had different yeasts in it, because there's all different kind of yeast all over, So
Yeah.
whatever he had could have come from a different area and had different yeast in it than what maybe the stuff that.
Exactly. And that's why my comment, there is no hard and fast rule about moisture content.
Yeah.
When you talk about how low does my moisture content have to be so my honey won't ferment?
Yeah.
Too many variables. Cannot answer.
That's
get it down. Generally, I understand that if you're sub 18%, you're probably going to be fine.
Yeah. And that's kind of the understanding that I had gathered in the past too. For whatever reason, somebody threw out there the number 18.6 and it kind of stuck, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. Maybe it's false information, but again, like you said, that's kind of subjective. So,
and I use a federally inspected packer, federally licensed packer. So that's part of what he does. He's a grader packer. So he grades the honey as to, the color, etc. And because he's packing what I'm producing is raw honey, it's not pasteurized. So he also, and not because of that, but he also in the process checks the moisture content before he packs it. If it's high, it comes back. It never has, but if it were ever high, he'd phone me up and say, pick this stuff up.
There's a few, I call them sideliners. Some of them still call themselves hobbyists in a meeting in Mississippi I go to, but they're firm believers in not only checking for the moisture, but they're firm believers in the first thing they want to do is get that yeast out. They want to warm that honey enough to kill that yeast. And somebody wanted to argue with them in a meeting one time about, are you cooking your honey? They said, no, we're not. We're killing the yeast and bringing the temperature back down.
Right.
Somebody just left out. What happened?
I don't know. You can see he's moved, so I don't know where he was muted or wasn't getting through or what was going on.
Yeah.
So I have to say that was one of the things that Bob talked about also was like raw honey and how kind of it's like there's no real hard and fast rule.
Exactly. People ask me all the time,
considered raw honey.
You sell raw honey, and I'll ask them, what's raw honey?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, it's raw honey.
This
and
was
give you some kind of a fairy tale thing that they think of, that they think raw honey is, and they'll say, "Yeah,
so
this
this
suits my honey." It doesn't mean anything,
right?
That's kind of like when somebody uses the term organic, right?
Yeah.
He kind of used those synonymous where it was kind of like, both of those are very
subjective.
That's right, very subjective.
Generally mean certified organic, which is a certification process, and there's rules.
Yeah.
Right. So that, organic, everything is organic. All honey is organic, right? It comes from plants. It's all organic.
Yeah.
The only thing I've ever seen, and I'll tell you, on raw honey, there's two things in the CFIA, that's Canada Food Inspection Agency rules about honey. And the first one is the definition of raw honey. It isn't a good definition, because there's no specifics. It just says honey that hasn't been heated beyond what is needed for handling and straining and whatnot. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that?
That was written by an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. However, reading between the lines, I'm taking that what they're saying is honey that hasn't been heated for any other reason. And what other reason do you heat honey? Pasteurization. Right? So I'm taking this as meaning honey that's not pasteurized. So not pasteurized to me equals raw.
Yeah.
Right.
So Bob's, when he was talking about raw honey, and there's not really any real hard lines, exactly what raw honey is. He said enzymes must be active for honey to be considered raw. So it has to have active enzymes in it. Like, okay, so what does that mean? And that's when he was talking about the half-life of diastase, sorry, and how high you can heat it for how long before you're killing all those enzymes.
So, have you ever talked to a beekeeper that can see that in their honey? You can see,
No,
oh, look,
exactly.
the enzymes are active.
Exactly.
No.
So, well,
Have
and
you,
I was
have
gonna
you ever talked to a lab that will tell you that?
exactly.
Have you ever talked to a customer that will say, that's not raw honey because the enzymes aren't active?
Never.
Never.
Well, so
Well, guess
my
what? It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, because I
It
was
just
gonna ask
sounds
him,
good.
You're arguing semantics, right?
It might be true,
well, because
but
I
it's
was
also
gonna
meaningless.
I was gonna ask him because when I'm making my creamed honey, I heat that liquid honey to 160 degrees to kill those yeasts and to make sure there's absolutely zero crystallization in it. But according to this chart that Bob had, the half-life of diastase at 179 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 seconds, that's when you're doing the half-life of the half-life. But that's 107. That's 19 more degrees than what I'm heating it. So am I not really killing everything in it? All those
question is a
enzymes.
little bit of
That
a
means there's
tangent.
still live enzymes in there. So I am still making creamed honey
Yeah,
with raw
I get
honey.
that. I got a little. This question is a little bit of tangent.
It's very gray.
It does circle back around there. I don't cream honey yet. I just got a creamer. I haven't even used it. It's my packer creams my honey. He's a personal friend of mine, and he runs a really small business that happens to be a licensed packer. So, is it necessary for you to heat the honey enough to kill the yeasts in order to cream the honey?
Is it necessary? No.
Yeah.
But
So-
when I did it before,
Yeah.
I was just getting the liquid honey out of our heated bottling tanks, and some larger crystals made it into my creamed honey.
Yep.
And so it kind of ruined the batch then, because then it's
That's
going to
right.
crystallize to that larger honey. So
Right.
ever since then, I heat my liquid honey to make sure positive that there's no crystallization in it.
Okay, so this is different then. Initially, you said I heat the honey to kill the yeasts, but now what you're saying is I heat the honey to decrystallize it.
Well, to kill the yeast and because when you heat it, it automatically kills the yeast.
Okay,
So
it automatically kills the yeast, but what I'm asking is it important to kill the yeasts? What you're doing is you're decrystallizing it. I understand that. And again, I'm not making creamed honey, so these are genuine questions. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. So I followed the dice method, and that's what the dice method tells you to do. You heat
to
it
kill the yeast.
and to kill the yeast and to make sure everything is completely uncrystallized.
Is there an authoritative document on the dice method? I've not studied that.
That's a good question.
Or is it
Edwin Dice?
What somebody wrote or whatever.
So I think earlier up in there, Brian.
You can start.
Hey, Brian.
Okay, here's Brian. I'll let you explain, Brian.
What am I explaining?
You dropped in a link up top. It says Fermentation and Crystallization of Honey by Edwin Dice.
Oh my gosh. All right. Thank you. I have to
Here we
start
go.
there. I can't believe that I had not read this document until like 2 weeks ago. Here I am, like the creamed honey guy, telling everybody how I make creamed honey and doing all this kind of stuff. Man, this document is so valuable in understanding the process of what goes on in creamed honey. First of all, it was written in 1932 or published in 1932. And I'm inferring a lot of this, but I think this was a time when the food industry was learning a lot about how to store and package just food in general, as they were learning the industrialization of food. Mass production of food required storage, all that kind of stuff. So it sounded like it was his PhD thesis for Cornell University. And again, I'm not positive on that part, but it's a 75-page document, and it goes through a series of experiments that he does that first of all addresses fermentation and all the different yeasts and all the theories that they had about what was causing fermentation and how to prevent it. And then it went into the process of crystallization, and it talked about the relationship between the two. And this is something I never really understood until I read this paper. And it has to do with and I'm terrible at things like microbiology and chemistry. So this is my understanding of this paper. So my message is this: anyone who's serious about creamed honey really needs to read that document in total. And I've posted it a couple of times. I think I even posted it on the No Life Beekeepers.
Okay,
But
good.
they're basically trying to find ways to make sure that their honey isn't going to ferment. And that's how, over the series of experiments, he ended up recommending this DICE method. So that 18.6, that moisture temperature comes from experiments in that study, I believe, right?
Okay.
And what's crazy, though, is this is in 1932, and he even self-admits, like, the refrigerators that we have were not super dialed in. So they were very fluctuating in their temperatures. So all of these numbers that we're taking to heart, we're holding right close to our chest, are based on like 1932 refrigeration techniques. Think about that, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's really important for everyone to go back and really read this. So all the things you guys are talking about are absolutely right. All those factors are important. The amount of yeasts in there, and you can kill the yeasts by using the temperature to raise it up and kill it quickly. The types of sugars as well is important, because it's how those sugars crystallize, as well as the temperature that the honey is crystallizing, because the rate of crystallization is a huge factor. If the honey is going to crystallize slowly, we know that it makes huge crystals, right? So that means that there's concentrations of sugar crystals in certain areas in the honey, which by default means that there's places where there's water is clustering too, as that honey is crystallizing slowly. And those clusters of water are going to be larger the slower that honey crystallizes. And those are those places where it's possible for fermentation to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember Philip showed some honey on a live, I don't know, a couple months ago, that had separated into like three different layers. Yeah. And that paper talks about how separation is often a precursor to fermentation, because that's exactly what's happening, is the crystals are concentrating in certain places of the jar, and the places where there's greater amounts of water is concentrating in other places. So something like that, that's like when you see like creamed honey that's been sitting on the grocery shelf for forever and it's started to separate. That, I think, is what's starting to happen. So so that dice paper is so important. He goes through all these different things. And then the other thing about it is, like, they grade the honey on these totally subjective terms: very fine, like slightly coarse, and it's totally subjective. So if you were to read like a college, like a published paper today, and they describe all the methodology behind it, and then go back and read this paper, you're like, man, there's so many holes in this methodology. It's crazy. But I think you have to put that lens on that it's 1932. And what I haven't done, and I'm interested in, is like what kind of work has happened since then to dial in a lot of the work that he's done, because it's pretty obvious that a lot of these things are estimates, you know. And even that temperature, like raising that honey up to kill yeasts, you look at his charts, and for a lot of honeys, raising it up to 120 is going to kill a lot of the yeasts. But again, it depends on the honey that you have, right? The different honey is going to have different sugars, and it's going to have a different makeup. So it's like these different factors are constantly playing into it. So again, people like Philip, Carl, Brad, you guys, via anyone who makes creamed honey, really needs to go back and read that paper in its entirety. And it would, like, I was shocked about how much I learned just sitting down and reading it one day.
I'll read that before I start making honey. It's still unclear to me, sorry if you mentioned this, Brian, but why killing yeasts for creamed honey is more important than killing yeasts for liquid honey.
Well, I think, like, if you take that same honey I think it's going to be more likely to ferment as you're trying to cream it if you don't cream it under the ideal conditions. So I think that's what they were trying to do, is go through that process of how do we store it in a way that isn't going to make it crystallize. So honey, like you take honey at 18.6 and honey at 18.6 that you try to crystallize, if you crystallize it incorrectly, it might have the potential to ferment. But if you crystallize it quickly, those crystals are going to be small. The areas where the water is are going to be super small. So the potential for it to crystallize isn't going to happen. So I never heat my honey up to that 150, 160 degrees. I have realized that I do heat my honey, but it's just to make sure it's liquefied, right? That purpose of not putting any crystals in. And as I read that paper, I realized I was kind of following more of the dice method than I realized, right? I think we're all familiar with the dice method by, reading the paragraph in the book or hearing someone at your club talk about it. And man, going back to that original source, I think is really, really valuable. And that's another thing I learned. Don't discount that, just like the fact that it's so antiquated and when it happened that there's no value in it. I think that's one of the reasons I never went back to really read anything about it.
Well, I like
seriously.
your approach to that yes, you can't discount it because it's older research. However, you did point out, again, refrigeration wasn't then what it is now, or even temperature grading and whatnot. So there's nothing black and white. It's not either bad or good. It is what it is.
Well, there's one guy I know. I don't know exactly the process he does making his creamed honey, but he has other beekeepers telling him he's doing it wrong. But he can't make it fast enough. He sells it fast as he can make it.
Well, so I guess it's wrong, but it's paying the bills.
It's all opinionated.
Yeah.
So the link that I just posted down there, that's the actual video that I watched to learn about the dice method. Or that's how I first learned about it anyway.
Okay.
Darren, it does both. It kills the yeast and it eliminates all the crystals.
There was a couple of questions we had.
And again, I'm sorry, Joey.
No, it's all right. I was trying to find some of the questions we had marked.
I'm just super gun shy about my creamed honey because I worked a really long time that first time to get that creamed honey, the texture that I wanted. And then it got ruined when those larger crystals got in. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that that there's no larger crystals getting in my creamed honey.
I say that I don't cream my honey, but that's the part of the process that I do. Is I will warm the honey and decrystallize it, fully liquefy it before it goes to the packer.
Yeah.
So it'll go in there, and within a couple of days, it's in the creamer.
Right.
And so that's the part that I do.
When I'm making my creamed honey, I'm taking 5-gallon buckets that we store in the garage, so fully crystallized honey, and putting it on the stove and uncrystallizing. So I need to make sure that there's not a single crystal, like it is fully crystallized honey that I'm uncrystallizing to make my creamed honey with.
Well, most
for the most part, yeah.
And there's nothing you can do with the crystals at the bottom of that container. They are not going to liquefy. I learned that, and I found that that's more common with honey that you've stored for an extended period of time. Sometimes it can get crystallized in the bottom of a container, and it is never going to liquefy. You'll caramelize it before you liquefy it.
I've not had that issue, but like I said, I'm just super gun shy about any crystals getting into my creamed honey now after that happened.
It's taken a long time. Like I'm talking, a pail that's sat there or a jar that's sat there for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
And it granulates on the bottom, particularly one that's granulated on the bottom only. It's separated that much. The honey is fine. But you can't liquefy that stuff. So I just
Darren, that's kind of true. some people don't realize they're killing the yeast when they're just trying to decrystallize. So
Yeah.
you're actually doing both if you go to the right temperature.
Somebody had a question about the Gary, I think, about the Dedant creamed honey. I don't have any with Dedant. I actually, the second time I had to do it, I ordered it from Cox Honey Farms, COX Honey Farms. It was a really good texture.
It was really good texture.
Helped me win first place.
And that's the thing. You can start with
just
anything
fixing
for seed.
marshmallow.
Find a nice cream honey you like. There's your seed.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you could buy my honey or Brian's honey and use that as your seed honey.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what did you do? 8-1 or 10-1 on the ratio?
10.
10-1 on that ratio.
That was another thing he tested in
Well,
his
between 9 and 10.
in his study was that ratio. And like there's a window. There's a great chart in there, and there's a window where like 5 to 10% of your seed is really ideal. And then it even showed going beyond 10% didn't hasten the process at all.
It probably just makes it take longer to set up, would be my assumption.
Yeah, so that was interesting too. Guys, I got to go. Maybe I'll come back on later, though.
I see you, Brian.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Take care.
See you
So
later.
I answered this question just with a yes or no, and the answer was no, but you just put it on the screen. So no, I didn't say that. What was the question? Did I say that diluting honey, fermented honey diluted, fed to bees kills them? No, that's not what I said at all. Open honey in my beehives, and I'm saying mine because a lot of people here don't store their bees away for 5 months at a time.
Yep.
The bees get out, they cleanse, they can, do whatever. So open feed, I'll call it, because generally it's sugar syrup, in the hive can absorb atmospheric moisture, humidity, and therefore the moisture content increases, and then it ferments, and then the bees eat it and they die because they don't get out of the hive to poop, because that fermented, you can just imagine, right? You just eat that and it'll blow up in your stomach. Well, the bees caught in the hive and they just explode. What I was saying about feeding bees was, if you have some fermented honey, you have to really dilute it a lot. But I would have no problem in the spring, in the summer, if you need to feed, dilute that in water and make some sugar syrup out of it, feed your bees. It should be fine. Don't expect that to stay good for a long time because it's already started to ferment. So as long as your bees can fly, they should be okay. Now, don't blame me if your bees die. That's just a guess. I'm not liable.
Proceed at your own risk.
Proceed at your own risk.
And you can heat it enough to get that fermentation out of there, or get the alcohol out, without cooking it before you do that.
So I posted a Google return on that temperature pasteurization, and it says it's 145 after 63 C.
Yeah, Lee Brad had a comment that he had posted back on that. I seen that earlier in the chat in reference to that.
And a lot of the stuff is Google searches. It's not coming out of here. It's coming out of the Googles. Coming out of the Googles. Yeah. Googleification.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very interesting topic. I appreciate answering my questions because I really don't know much about it.
Well, I like the back and forth on it, honestly. We kind of, figure this thing out, and for the betterment of everybody on here, we want, we all want to make the best product we can, get the best value out of that product that we can,
My creamy mentor, actually, we're talking about ratios. He recommended that I go 15 to 1.
And like I said, when Brian was still on,
not 15 to 1, 15%.
15%.
15 to 100. Sorry, Melissa, I talked over you there.
No, you're fine. I was just in my brain. It just, the amount that you add is just going to, because the liquid honey is automatically going to crystallize to the crystals that are in the jar with it. Just how much you've already introduced to it is going to determine how long it takes for it to fully crystallize to that
I think that
crystal
statement is
size.
generally true, but I think there definitely are limitations to that.
Right.
Right. If there's not enough seed, then it's really never going to take hold. I don't imagine you could put too much seed in it. Right.
Yeah, probably
If
not.
it was half seed, then I think it's going to cream up pretty fast. But
That's right.
you're not getting ahead very fast.
No. You know, I think another thing to point out too that he spoke about specifically was, and something that you may not think about when you are cleaning honey to bottle. He talks about specifically, you know, crystals can start to form on even a foreign piece of material in there, as simple as a piece of dirt, anything foreign that might go in there, a leg of a bee, you know, anything like that. Crystals can start to form off of that. And this is something we discussed within the honey show when you talk about, and I kind of use this term a little bit cautiously, but when you filter honey, and I know that gets a little bit, you know, we talk about is, you know, when you're talking about raw honey and you filtered it, well, if you filter it, it's not raw, and you know, back to that whole discussion that
Where's the line between filtering and straining?
Right. Yeah, I know, and there's and that's very subjective as well, you know. So I mean, but I thought that was very interesting stuff. So we actually learned a lot here this weekend. I thought it was a really good presentation.
That's right. That crystal starting on a foreign object, even a domestic object, if I can put it that way, pollens,
sure.
etc. The commercial packer that I toured in the city, they talked about their liquid honey, and so they do heat that quite dramatically, pasteurize it, and they also will filter that to 1 micron. So that takes out just about all of the goodies that we talk about in honey, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they have to have that pretty warmed up to get through a 1 micron strainer.
Wow.
So that's the liquid honey. And so it's not going to granulate as easily because there's none of those foreign objects or even domestic objects in there in the honey. My honey is 400 microns. And I settled on that because I wanted the coarsest strain I could. I tried a 600 and I noticed that there was a little bit of visible matter, you know. I don't think it was anything contaminating, but I didn't want any specks and visible matter in there. The 400 seems to be just right. There's enough kind of raw. You got that little bit of wax line at the top of your honey kind of thing. And so that just brings authenticity, I think, to the product. And the fact that it's 400 times as lower straining than the commercial packing, I'm okay with that.
You know, it's funny that you said that, Brad, and I appreciate you actually pointing that out because I've struggled with that a lot too, as far as how far do you filter it down, because you want, at the end of the day, everybody says we want raw honey, okay? And again, we went through all that, so there's no need to go back through it. But they also are very, very much inclined to pick up a jar off the shelf that looks very clean, like extremely clean, right? So it's like that's really tough. So
have a bee leg show up in their honey and see how much they like that.
That's right. Hey,
you want me to open the extractor and give you a jar of what comes out of there? That's raw honey.
That's raw.
I don't think you want that.
Right. So we have filtered down to that 400, which I thought was acceptable. I feel like it gets it very clean, but I'm not doing. I still classify it myself as raw honey.
You ready?
So
yeah, that's what I classify mine. It's actually labeled that way. I took that off my label at one point, and people start phoning me. How come you don't have raw honey? Because it's in the store, right? So it's not like a market that they can ask me. And they phone me. How come you don't have raw honey anymore? I've always bought raw honey. You don't have raw honey. Well, it's the same honey. It just doesn't say that on the label right now. So, because I got to the point where I thought, you know what, that doesn't mean anything. Well, guess what? It means something to the customer.
Yeah.
Even though they can't define it.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
I
That's
should just
right.
put on my label, yes, this is the honey you came in the store to buy.
I get quite a few people asking, this is raw honey, right? And they, probably a lot of them don't even know what that really means.
Right.
They've just been told that raw honey is what you want. Raw honey is what's good for you.
Well, if I ask, so what's raw honey? Well, then they'll throw things out like, well, it hasn't been processed. What kind of processing are you afraid of? Like, what do
Right.
you
Yeah.
think happens to honey? Right?
Yeah.
But you don't
Technically, when you uncapped it with a tool and you slung it, you processed that honey,
did.
right?
I did. Here's another tangent. I listened to a nutrition expert on a video recently, and the question was posed to him because he was using terms like unprocessed, processed, and ultra processed. So the interviewer said, "Okay, define those." And basically, he said, "Well, unprocessed. That's kind of, you can have an apple, and that's an unprocessed food, right? It's picked, it's transported, it's stored, you eat it." He said a processed food is anytime you do anything with that. You slice that apple, now it's a processed food because it's not the way it was. You've done something to it. Ultra processed, he said, basically, if you can't easily do that in your kitchen, that's ultra processed. So that was his definition of what that was. So if you can do it in your own kitchen, then it's maybe processed, and that's it.
To me, that sounds pretty logical. I mean, when I'm looking at it, it does. So,
well, hydrogenated oils or something. Like, how are you going to do that at home? I don't know. That would be ultra processed. And
I think we were traveling in Washington one time, and I was looking for some local honey at the time, and we passed a health food store. I stayed in the car, but my wife went in to see if they had any honey in there. I wanted to pick up some, and the only thing they had in there was organic. It was labeled organic. That was she sent me a picture. She said, "You sure you want me to buy this?" That was the nastiest looking stuff I'd ever seen in my life.
Was it even American?
I don't know. She didn't. She took a picture of the jar where it didn't have the label on it, but
I think a lot
you
of
can
your
see
organic
all
honey
kind of
comes out of Brazil.
chunks of junk in there.
There's a few organic honey producers I know in Canada. One in Alberta, I know that. But it doesn't fetch a premium. Organic doesn't fetch a premium anymore.
You know what I like is when people ask me about Manuka honey.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're like, well, I order this Manuka honey online. I'm like, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's 100% Manuka honey too.
Yeah. Who here has eaten Manuka honey?
I ordered some when we first started beekeeping, just because I was curious, because you hear about it, but it's still sitting in my kitchen. Like I've not.
So have you tried it? You haven't tasted it?
Yeah, but it was a long time. Like when we first started beekeeping, I don't recall.
Well, I've bought some that's labeled Manuka honey. I'm not an expert to even know if it is. I think it probably is. I just think it has an interesting. It's not a creamed honey, but it's not a liquid honey. It's kind of almost a gelatinous honey, and it has a kind of an interesting flavor. It's not a flavor that I would say, yum, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a flavor. It's not like buckwheat where it tastes like something you got off a pig barn floor or something like that. It's kind of an interesting flavor that's not attractive nor repulsive. It's almost minty or something. Kind of woody and minty at the same time. I don't know.
That was kind of my experience too. I wouldn't say it's something that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to order a 5-gallon bucket of this stuff.
No, I have no problem eating it at all.
Yeah.
Well, so this lady, though, I was not arguing with her, but going back and forth trying to explain how Manuka honey is so adulterated.
Yeah.
And she was not understanding at all.
Yeah.
Like any direction I tried to explain what adulterated meant or how it was being adulterated, she was just not grasping my concept. She's like, well, I order it online. I'm like, okay, you just you keep ordering your Manuka honey
Yeah.
online.
That's right. Michael said it's New Zealand. I think generally produce a lot of it, and it's
Yeah.
I think that's the only
tea-
place
the
it
tea
comes from
trees.
is New Zealand. Yeah.
Tea trees is where it comes from.
There's more Manuka honey sold than is produced.
It's
so
oh yeah, yeah.
let's
I've heard
figure that out.
I've heard that the market completely blew up on Manuka, that it's gone, and I was somebody who was telling me that story, that there's beehives, there's tons of beehives up in the mountains in New Zealand that have been there for years, and nobody goes to get them because there's no market. They
Huh.
just abandoned the whole thing, which is
Well,
weird.
So what I thought was funny though about the Manuka honey thing is I had this conversation with this lady just a couple weeks ago, right? And so then it'd been really dry where we are. So like I was getting really bad dander. So I went and bought some dander shampoo from Walmart or whatever. And I got home and I'm taking a shower and I look at the bottle. It says made with Manuka honey.
Oh yeah, sure it is. In your shampoo.
Like, look, Tom, I've got real Manuka honey in my
Yeah.
shampoo.
The Manuka honey came from China. Isn't that crazy? I didn't
Yeah.
know that China produced Manuka honey.
Yeah, well, they do, but not from tea trees.
That's right. Yeah.
So Head and Shoulders is sourcing Manuka honey in case y'all didn't know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Somebody had said something. Oh, Larimore about the metal up.
Where?
I keep having people say about the metal utensils destroy at least one person every market says something to us about this. So like I think it's like an old wives' tale, I think
There's
probably
all
before we
kinds
had
of that stuff. All
but I
kinds
think it
of
was
that
like before
garbage.
we had stainless steel, right? And they're using because Bob talked about this today too, like galvanized metals and things like that. Maybe when people were using more of that, it did affect the honey. But I think that the utensil, because he said only gold and silver are the only things that really don't.
It's not the galvanized that does anything to the honey other than contaminate it, because it eats the
Right.
the
No,
That's
yeah.
the acidity
But
level.
I'm wondering if that's
Doesn't
kind of
change the honey.
where that came from. But yeah, Bob
People
says something
believe
like
all
gold
kinds
and
of
silver is the only thing that honey doesn't react
stupidity.
to or whatever.
I get
But
a lot
yeah.
of it too. I used to get a lot of it when I did markets. And
What's the acidity level of honey? Somewhere around 3.9.
yeah, it's
So very low fours.
4-ish, 4, 5 or something. I don't know.
I thought that's what I understood it to be.
Yeah.
Say that again.
If I had a hand, I'd Google that, but I'm gonna.
I believe that I understand honey, the acidity level of honey to be roughly 3.9 to very low fours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very acidic.
Hmm.
Hence the reason why,
I'm not sure.
even storing that long periods of time inside of food grade plastic is probably questionable if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty,
Oh, there, Lee put the pH of honey.
Oh, there we go.
3.9.
3.9 ranges from 3.4 to 6.1. Interesting. That's very broad range.
I wonder if that has to do with the moisture content.
It could.
What changes it from one to the other?
Mm.
I don't know.
You heard him say that, right, JW?
JW is too busy politicking.
I think he was. I think so.
I was sitting on the back row sleeping.
Well, we got a front row seat, so we got in there early, right before 7:30 when they were opening up, and Melissa and I got a front row seat, saved 3 seats. Melissa, myself, and Mr. Irwin there, and he only sat there for a little bit, and he got gun shy on me.
Did he even come up there and sit in the front?
Yeah, he did, because he left his coffee cup up there.
Oh, yeah. He said he would. What did you tell me, JW, when we were talking about sitting in the front row?
Well, I never did sit in the front row. That's where you got hit with the erasers when the teacher threw it at you for cutting up in class or something. I got used to sit in the back, so that's where I sat.
He had PTSD for backing up, right?
He was having flashbacks.
I think so.
Hey, JW, I got a question for you. I put this in the chat the other day, and I don't know if you saw it. So I think there was mention of your first name being James. Is that correct?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Well,
Yes.
I think somebody said
Yes.
it was
First name's Just.
Oh
Second name's
gosh, here we
Wonderful.
go.
just.
Get on your boots, Brad. The crap's gonna get thick in here.
Just Wonderful, JW.
Yeah. Okay.
My
I
mother
get it.
named that. I was
Yeah.
the youngest of 10 children. My mother named me Just Wonderful.
I smell
And
something.
I told
Yes, sir.
my
Not
dad one
good.
time that
Yep.
he
That's
finally
right.
created the perfect product, so he quit after me. So, you know what he said?
Jesus.
He said, "Shit," and walked off.
And that's what I smell. I thought it was
That's right.
something.
That's right.
I thought it was something. I was going to bring prominence to you there, but I don't know if I should now.
Yeah, let it go, Brad. Don't do that.
No, it's
You
actually they know what my given name is. One of my sisters named me, so it's
Do you
Jerry
know-
Wayne.
Jerry. Okay.
Okay.
And I
Well,
always hated it, so
there was see, somebody said your name was James, and I thought, well, that's interesting because I know there's an astronaut.
yeah, that's James Irwin.
Name's James Irwin. I met
I've
him.
got a brother. I started to comment that I have a brother now deceased. His name is James Lee Irwin,
Oh yeah.
and I have a nephew that was James Lee Irwin Jr. and he's deceased also. Was my brother's oldest son. So
This astronaut was a B, James B. Irwin, as I recall.
yeah.
So, Brad, I asked him that question, very question last night. And I said, hey, what is your actual name? Not JW. What does it stand for? And he's looking at me and he wouldn't say nothing. And I'm like, okay, my two guesses are this. It's either James or Jerry. And he said, you're wrong. And I'm like, okay. So I started thinking about it, whatever. And then when I got him to sign the form for the Honey Show entry, okay, that's where I snatched it and seen it. Yep. And I tried to get him too. I said, hey, you have to put your social security number on there too, buddy. He wouldn't fall for that one. He
You
wouldn't
know,
do it.
my grandfather on my mother's side was LD, and I was pretty close to being a teenager before I realized it wasn't initials. His actual name was LD, ELDEE.
Mm-hmm.
Huh,
And
interesting.
a lot of people knew him for years and didn't realize it wasn't LD. It was LDEE.
Huh.
I have
So
an ancestor
Richard-
who had a middle initial and no middle name.
LD.
The story is when he went to school, all the children the first day they're getting their names calling out the roll, and they'd all say the first, second, and last name, and he felt left out because he didn't have one, so he made one up. So
So
it was
Richard
C.
Well, the use of your first and middle name is a lot more common in the South than it is, in the North. I'm talking about the States, of course, but
I was told that Michael J. Fox is that way. The J doesn't
Mhm.
stand for anything. That's his middle name is J.
yeah.
I call him Thomas Allen all the time.
That's when you get in trouble.
Well, he's always in trouble, so that explains
I
a lot.
call him that all the time. He's
All the
trouble
time. So Richard Briner had a comment there about he does the 10% in a jar and then just stirs it, and when he wants to sell, which is great if you're just doing a couple
done
jars
that.
at a time.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
That works.
I'm when I do the creamer, I'm bottling 120 pounds of it. So
Absolutely.
but yeah. And then somebody else had a comment earlier about I don't remember who it was, about they've not had anybody ask for creamed honey.
Oh yeah, that was.
And we've never really had anybody ask for it either, because people don't really know
People
what
don't
it
know.
is.
Yeah.
But once you make it and you get people to taste it,
Mhm.
they purchase it. Like over 90% of the time, if somebody tastes our creamed honey, they're buying it. And we're selling creamed honey.
Oh, I just undone you, Lee.
We're selling creamed honey for double per ounce what we sell liquid honey for.
It's interesting how just the creaming of the honey changes the perception of the flavor of the honey, the
It
taste.
completely.
Yeah,
Right?
So that's
It's a very different experience.
definitely.
So that's
is.
another thing we do. So the first batch of creamed honey that we made earlier this year, we made that with our dark honey, and the flavor is completely different from our liquid dark honey, and it's just our dark honey, right? Plus the seed, obviously.
Yeah.
And so we'll tell people that, like, this was made with our dark honey. Taste the creamed honey, and then I'll give them a sample of the dark honey, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, that's so different!" And then a lot of times they'll buy both.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
So,
was just
I mean-
enjoying some of. I've still got quite a bit of Bob Walker's flavored honeys here, and we've been enjoying the strawberry honey. And oh man, that stuff is just amazing.
sounds
It's
good.
so creamy,
Mhm.
and the flavor is so bold in that strawberry. We both like the strawberry flavor. So,
But
we
that's
just-
the trick, is like getting people to taste it, right?
yeah,
And then you get them hooked. Like, people have sought our table out now just so they can buy more creamed honey,
That'd be nice.
but they didn't know what it was before they were introduced to it.
Hey, JW, you can get Boz to sing for us.
Oh, no.
Hey, was he happy to see you when you got home?
Imagine. Excuse me.
Yeah.
He took my breath away.
You got all choked up over it, huh? It was only a day, buddy.
Creamed honey is the only raw honey, which is funny because if anything, creamed honey would be more processed than your runny honey.
Well, yes and no. Is the Amish creamed honey naturally
Yeah.
allowed to granulate honey? Is that? I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty, unprocessed. To me,
Bless you.
my creamed honey is, slightly less quote. I do air quotes, but I dropped the cat. Processed, because I'll warm the liquid honey prior to the customer, right? I'll just stay a week or two ahead of the customers on the liquid honey, because it'll granulate in the jar, and then I'll warm it up and it's nice and liquid for the next few
Mhm.
months.
Mhm.
But the creamed honey, I'll warm that, it'll get creamed, boom, and it's done, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I love about creamed honey. It does cost me a bit. I sell it the same price. I sell about 1-to-1, in the driveway, in the stores. So I do make a higher margin on the liquid, but it's more work.
So
So
you
I-
sell your liquid for more than you sell your creamed honey for?
No, it's the same. It's the same. That's what I'm saying. That the cream does cost me more to process, to make the
Yeah,
cream.
yeah.
But I sell them for the same price, and I eat that cost because it's less work. I don't have to do anything with the creamed honey. I bring it home, I get the labels on it, it sits there, customer comes, they buy it. The liquid honey, then I gotta go and warm it and make sure it stays liquid, and all that sort of thing. It's just more work and more hassle.
See, we
Creamed
make
honey
much
is
more money on our
easy.
creamed honey.
Yeah.
Speaking of honey, Melissa,
What?
did my black jar honey have a comment on it? They said they put comments on it.
Well, they don't put comments on the black jar.
Yeah.
What are they going to tell you? Tell your bees to pick.
Well, I
for
figured
tasting
mine would say, "Did you have a skunk in your bed? Did you?"
Hmm.
I don't know. After I dumped that your honey into the black jar, I licked my fingers and I thought it tasted pretty good. So
Well, that's all that counts.
Brian, we're the same. So a pound of liquid honey is in a plastic squeeze bottle is $12. 10 ounces of creamed honey is $15.
Boy, if I could get that.
Well, that's
Man.
what I tell you. These people live out there and they take advantage of those city gas.
I'd be making $250,000 a year if I could get
places.
those prices.
We were talking to one guy when I was picking up my honey show stuff, and he lives in Chicago.
Yep.
And he said that he gets $20 a pound
for liquid honey.
for liquid honey
That
in
wasn't creamed, it was for liquid. And he
in a
said,
glass clean line jar.
Yeah.
So gross. Okay, so you could say a couple bucks off of that, right? if you want to get
Yeah,
net,
probably
net
$2,
honey.
$1.50, $2.
Yeah,
But even still, he's getting $20 for a pound of honey.
that's
He said
wild.
he knows people up there that get 25 a pound of honey.
Yeah,
That's
That's
insane.
the reason that guy from Chicago last week wanted 23 bottles.
That's right. He probably reselling it.
No doubt.
my 2.2 pound jar, which 1 kg, so 2.2 pounds, to a store, the wholesale on that is less than $13,
Wow.
and even retail at markets or in the driveway is 15.
Wow.
So, boy, I don't get anything, and I get way more for my honey than most people around here.
Brad, I would think up as far north as what you are, that you would gain a higher premium than we would down here in the States, but that surprises me.
Ryan, what's considered your specialty honey?
There's a lot more honey production here, though.
Okay.
You know, I'm gonna drop a name here. I was talking to Lloyd Harris earlier this week, talking on the phone for like an hour, and he told me that he had a colony. I forget when it was. I don't think it was long ago. He had 500 pounds of honey out of that colony. Now that's not
Right.
common, but it happens.
Yeah.
The big canola, the honey producers that sit on canola, 200 pounds, 300 pounds, 350 pounds,
Okay.
not uncommon.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a supply thing.
Yeah. It seems like a supply demand where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas
So
the American average is 55 pounds.
yeah, I was gonna say we would be much lower than that.
Yeah.
For sure. Not lower than a 55, but lower than your
We're
350 pounds.
the average generally in Manitoba is about 170, 175 pounds, and I'm below that yet. So that's why I jacked my price a little bit. It's a varietal. It's a wildflower honey. It's much. I was going to say much better than a canola honey. It's more unusual. It's more rare than a straight canola honey.
Sorry, Lee, I didn't mean to do that.
So that's why I hook my customers and say, "Hey,
Yeah,
try
there
this."
you go.
Yeah, if I can get them in the jar, I can get in their wallet.
Well, I mean, that's kind of our job, really. You know, you want to keep you have to be able to turn a profit in doing this. And there's nothing easy about beekeeping. I think if most people had to understand or had to keep their own bees to get the honey that they use maybe on a daily basis, they would probably not, right?
The
Because
most
it's
expensive
not
jar
easy.
of honey you'll ever buy,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, I agree.
You know, and it's been tough. I've had to make those tough choices, but I had to, just say, I'm either going to make money or I'm not going to do this. Right?
Mhm.
Expenses have gone up so much; it's been really difficult,
Yeah,
and not every customer is my customer.
that's right.
Right?
Yep, I agree with that.
Raise
100%.
the price until some people won't buy it, and you're just about right.
Yep.
Right?
I heard a guy say before, if you've got so much work that you are turning it away, you're not priced high enough.
Yeah, yeah.
But like you
Well,
said,
Buddy said that to me my first year or two. He said, if you have honey left at the end of the year before harvest, or no, he said, if you run out of honey before harvest, your price is too low.
Yeah.
So bring it up. There's no reason to give away all the honey in the first 2 months. If that's your model, like if you're wholesaling honey in a barrel or something like that, then that's different. That's a different model. But most of us sell markets, farm gate, and maybe in the store. So that's my model.
Well,
So I want it to last.
Yeah. We've even gone to markets before where there's more than just us vending honey there, and they're cheaper than we are, but we have a bigger variety of products that we offer, and maybe our knowledge base is more, so they'll end up buying from us rather than, the cheaper guy on the other side of the market.
Yeah. I've been at markets with other honey vendors too, but generally they're a little different. I go to a market, or I used to go to a market where there was a honey vendor that made 500 different flavors of honey, and they sold these little jars of honey, and they make good money at it. And I'm totally okay with that because they don't do flavors. And so it's just not a competition.
Right.
And they don't have clover honey like I have. They don't have liquid honey.
Well, and sometimes I wonder too, the people that are selling when we go to these markets that are selling their honey for cheaper than we are, because in the St. Louis area, typically a pound of honey is going to be between $10 and $12. Occasionally you'll find somebody selling it for $8 a pound. And I honestly feel like sometimes those people that are selling it for $8 and $10 a pound in our area are probably backyard beekeepers that only have a couple 100 pounds of honey that just need to get rid of it, right?
That's all you can do is just wait them out.
Right.
Right.
And
You'll be out
that's
of honey
fine
in
because
6 weeks, and then you can pick up the sales.
exactly. And that was also one of the reasons why when we first started, we never got into markets really until the last couple of years, because we didn't want to be those beekeepers that ran out of honey. We wanted to always have an excess of honey, because if you run out of honey, what happens? Your customers still want honey, but you don't have any. They're going to become somebody else's customers.
You don't want to give them an opportunity to go somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. So
I hear you 100%.
So we never did. We just did word of mouth and porch pickup for the first few years because we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of honey stockpiled, so to speak.
So how many pounds, if you don't mind me asking, how many pounds are you able to move in a year then? Like what do you need for production for a year of sales, for example?
So honestly, I can't tell you off the top of my head. I know last year we harvested 2,500 pounds, and we just went through that in June, right? Like right when we started harvesting this year. So
okay,
in July. So in about a year, we went through
number,
2,500 pounds of honey.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a good little. Keep working at that. You'll exhaust that.
Yeah.
I sell more honey this time of year than I do in the mid-summer. Whenever all the little hobby beekeepers, I say little, all the other hobby beekeepers have a little honey. Mine just kind of trickles out. But once this time of year, when they run out, is when I start bottling pretty regular.
I'm the same. September, October are my worst months. October is my worst month. It actually, October was a little better than September. I think it was just an anomaly because I got a big invoice in or something like that. But yeah, so I think that's probably what it is. The hobbyists are pulling the honey off and giving it to their neighbors, and they're not buying mine at the store.
Could be.
That's okay.
What do you sell your?
Said sold while I was in Peoria, 22. Yesterday afternoon and today, he sold 22 pounds off the table at the farm.
Really?
Oh, you did?
Well, getting the prices you guys are getting, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
What are you selling it for, JW? $10?
$10. I'm an honest beekeeper. I'm not like you guys that's got them yippies.
Hey, well, let me ask you this. You say you're an honest beekeeper because you're selling it for cheaper than we are. But let me ask you one question, and this is a yes or no. Did your honey win any awards?
I don't know.
It was a strange silence there.
Say it louder for the people in the back of the room, please.
You know what he did, Brad? Was you in earlier on the conversation?
What?
I was at the Illinois conference, and they were too. Melissa had all these honey entrants, but they weren't allowed to enter the black jar honey.
Because you're not Illinois residents.
Illinois residents. So Sonny there, he goes out to my truck and he gets a cup of my little old 2-ounce sample that I carry for people to taste this. And he takes it in and puts it in the black jar and then enters it in my name. Now they're giving me thunder because I didn't win it.
Hey, you brought it on yourself, fella.
Which I honestly could care less about the honey show, you know.
Hey, his honey's pretty good honey, though. I mean, I like it. I enjoyed it. But, you know, I would say that one class in the honey show is the most subjective of anything else because it strictly goes on taste, no appearance. I mean, I'm guessing when they pull it out, you can get an aroma of that, but it's strictly on taste. So that really has to do with the individual. Brad may love canola honey. I may hate it.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the end of the day, if he's the one judging that,
That's the
you
one
know,
that wins that day.
right, exactly. So
The criteria to choose the judges should be a jar of buckwheat honey. You let everybody taste the buckwheat honey, and those who love it don't get to judge anything else because
There
they
you
don't
go.
know what world they're talking about.
Yeah.
I think Darren earlier commented, said he loves this stuff.
I know my wife
Yeah.
likes it too. I can't stand that stuff.
Hey, you know what? More for them, right, Brad?
Blackberry
Yeah, they can
blossom.
have it. We don't fight over the buckwheat. She can have it all.
There you go.
Brian said he harvested about 3,000 pounds and doesn't think he'll make it to next harvest.
Well, I can see how you
Nice.
folks in Canada with those large fields, Brad, can say that your honey is so and so and so and so, but I'm surrounded by agricultural and multiple floras and multiple trees, and who knows where them honeybees go if they, I know they're going to collect their forage from the most handy source because they're opportunists, just like I am, or like we all are. But I don't tell folks that my honey is clover, my honey is alfalfa, or mine's wallflower. I just say it's honey. And I think in my case, I'm not saying like where you got thousands of acres or 4 or 5 sections of canola or that. I could say where you could say that was, canola honey, or like in your case. But you say that a lot of your honey is a wallflower type honey, is it not?
Yeah.
Is that what you told me?
Yeah, I'm in a more hayland and marsh area,
Well, yeah.
and there's typically not a lot of canola here or any other kind of crop really. So yeah, it's whatever's in the hay fields, whatever's in the marsh. It's a much lighter honey, and it's been tested by magnetic resonance imagery, and the lab guy emailed me. He says, "Is this weird?" He says, "There's no canola in this honey," and I said, "Well, I know it's no canola in that honey." So that's kind of where I can stand apart in Manitoba because it's pretty strange.
I
Very
understand
strange.
you can have it tested, and they supposedly can tell what the floral source was, but
Yeah,
I'm not going to go that effort. When I extract honey, we've talked about this a little bit before. Whatever comes out of the extractor, it gets mixed. I don't
yeah,
grade mine.
that's me. I separate the yards, so each yard will go separately
Yeah.
in the jars, and I label them as such. But yeah, whatever I get every year, it's a little different. If it's a wet year, it'll be a little different than a dry year.
Certainly.
That sort of thing. And if it's a good sweet clover year, that's the honey you really want. That's a really nice honey. But that's why, I was saying people can get 200, 300 pounds or more. And the average is like 170, 175. Well, mine are 100 to 120 is my yields. And that's terrible. That's a crop failure for most beekeepers in Manitoba. That's why I have to charge that extra per pound price, so that I can survive. All my inputs are the same as Ian, for example, right?
Yeah.
All of your hive inputs are the same, and yet he's pulling off 2 times as much or more than I am. So I'm getting 2 times as much per pound for my honey than he is his.
Brad, do you store all of your honey bulk like in 55-gallon drums, or how do you do that?
5-gallon pails, 50 pounds at a time.
Okay, gotcha.
I've got about 250 pails in the shed right now.
And do you put those on pallets and move them with your machine that you have?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I have a pallet jack in the building that I can move. I put them on a standard pallet, and then I put them 3 high. So there's 36 on a pallet. So that's 1,800 pounds on a pallet I can move around. I try not to have to move around because there's not much room in the building.
Yeah.
But
that's kind of a roundabout way that I store everything. Is I had everything settling in 55-gallon drums, And then I just the other day finished the last 2 drums, and I pumped them into 5-gallon buckets after I had finished skimming the top, getting little bits of wax that had remained after I clarified it and such, which it was pretty clean for the most part. And then after I pumped it in those 5-gallon pails, I move it off to the side. I don't really put it on pallets, but what I do is I stack it up off to the corner of my garage area. And then between every row of buckets, I put a piece of cut down piece of plywood in between there. And then I do another stack of buckets, a piece of plywood, and then another stack. So I go 3 high on the buckets on those stacks. So very similar to kind of what you're doing. You're just using the pallet.
Yeah, I use the little pallets because then I can pick those off with my tractor. I don't necessarily have to hand bomb those off of there. I can share a picture here if I'm allowed.
50 pounds gets heavy if you do it more than once.
Is heavy
right?
enough. I mean, when I usually try to take them to the packer in sequential lot numbers. Every pail is a lot. So I try to put them on the pallets in sequentials. And so I have to sometimes sort those. And I did that a couple of weeks ago, and I lifted probably 8,000 pounds of honey that day.
Oh, gosh.
And my chiropractor hates me.
Oh, yeah. I bet your back hated you.
Yeah, it was pretty sore. Pretty sore. It's all, my job is no cardio. It's just all weights.
Bulking up for the winter.
Can I share a picture, Joey?
You should be able to. Can you bring it up? If you can, I will.
I think I've got it here. I can't click on it.
See, I'm not that talented. I just send my pictures to Lee and have him do it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the kind of I just put it in front of the overhead door, and then I can grab it with the tractor. And that's from the inside.
Well, those are shorter pallets, aren't they?
Yeah, because I can't lift an unlimited weight with my tractor. So each pallet will weigh 300 pounds. And, my tractor's kind of maxing out about 400, 500 pounds. So, yeah. So that's the crop.
I like it.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. One more question for you. Kind of not that big a deal, but the buckets that you're using, are those a 70 mil or are those a 90 mil bucket?
I don't know, but they're a heavier bucket from what this company sells. I know that.
Probably a 90.
Perhaps. I did ask him. I was talking to the sales guy one time, and because I stack them like that, I asked him, what's that bucket rated for top loading kind of thing, and he said some ungodly number like 300 pounds or something. And I said, oh, okay, because I said I usually only go 3 high, so we're only putting 100 pounds on top of each one.
Yeah.
So I'm okay that way. Yeah, they're pretty tough. They're, the key is, and I hear people talking about this when they discover it the hard way. The key is, like you were saying, you put the bucket, then you have to put something on the bucket, and then you put the next bucket on it. Do not set the second bucket on the lid of the first one, because that puts the weight on the lid, not on the wall of the pail.
Yeah.
I think it was a video Gus Mitchell did that we saw how he stacks his buckets, and that's kind of where you got that idea.
It might have been, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to sit on the walls of the pail, not on the kind of the middle of the lid.
I believe I heard a horror story that somebody told me when they had stacked the buckets on top of one another, but they were stacking one bucket on top of the other lid, and they went 3 high. Well, at some point in time, that plastic lid failed, and guess what? One of those buckets sunk down to the other one, and now you disperse all the honey out of there all over the floor.
Yeah, that's nasty.
Yeah,
that you basically just open up the garage door, then let the bees come in and clean it up.
I use a shelving board in between mine.
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
perfect.
Yep,
perfect, and that stabilizes everything too. These buckets that I was using, I don't know if you noticed, they're made in St. Albert, Alberta, just outside Edmonton, and Pro Western, I think, is the company, and they have a plastic handle. And you'd think, oh, a plastic handle, maybe that wouldn't be so good, but they are way, 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 way better than those wire handles. I found the wire handles tend to tear through the plastic on the pail.
Hope, yeah.
Those plastic handles, I've literally grabbed the side of that plastic handle at -40 in the winter in my truck to pull it to the back of the truck, and it just bends, it just deforms, right, and then goes back to the plastic handle and doesn't break. They are
That's good.
unbelievable material that they're made out of. I'm a big fan.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm guessing you don't hang on to those buckets. Do you reuse those, or those a one time?
Every year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've had those for, I can't think how many years. Probably, what am I, 9, 8, 7, 6, probably 6 or 7 years. I think I bought most of them in 2017.
Now, do those probably don't ever sit out in the UV rays, though? Correct.
No.
So
Yeah.
I have some that I did let sit out in UV for a couple of years. They still seem to be pretty good, but I know what you're getting at. I think that's the only thing that'll really kill those handles is UV. Yeah.
Breaking down that plastic.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I can't really trust those as much.
Sure.
But yeah, they're good. The packer washes them up. I bring them home. I store them away in a clean area, and by the end of the summer, my shed is right jammed full of these empty pails, and then I can start filling them up again.
Well, it saves you a cost there. I don't know what that bucket and lid would run you in your area, but how much?
It'd be $15 a piece.
Oh wow!
There's probably $6,000, $6,000 or $7,000 worth of pails.
Holy cow! Yeah, that's a large expense.
Yeah,
big expense.
they're probably with the lid here about $11.
Yeah.
Again, it's been a while since I bought them, but they come on a skid of 60, I think. So I just buy a skid of pails whenever I need it, and I don't even look at the price. It's just okay. Here's my credit card. I need the pails.
Make it easy on me.
That's right. Yeah, be gentle. So, yeah, but you're right. We have to treat them kindly though, because you don't want them to go missing or get all damaged, so you can't use them, because that's a big investment.
So when you use the honey out of them, do you just wash them out with water, or you put them out with the bees? Depending on the time of year, I suppose, or let them clean it up, or what do you do?
Yeah, no, well, see, because I use my friend, he's a packer, everything goes there. So when I pick up my honey, I get boxes of packed honey and empty pails. So they wash them up real nice. Yeah. They're all stacked, and then I just take that stack and I put it in my clean storage for next season. Mm-hmm. And we'll wash them. If they need washing, we'll wash them. If they need rinsing, we'll rinse them before we refill them. But they're usually pretty darn clean.
Yeah. I've done the same thing with any that we've gotten back ourselves. I usually go back in soap and hot water, even though I know they were really clean. It doesn't take a whole lot, and we stack them together, and then usually put them downstairs in our basement. But I'll go back through and rewash, clean them, dry them out, let them sit out for a minute so that there's no moisture in them, and then go from there.
And that's a key to keep the surface, especially inside. Don't scratch it or anything. Don't give it any abrasions, because as soon as you do, that'll get dirty and you'll never get it clean.
Yeah,
right?
Good.
That's kind of key with those. Even the outside, I like the outside to be clean when I take it to packer too, and I know if there's any imperfections in the outside like that, boy, it doesn't want to come clean.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been able to keep those pretty clean too. I'll have my boys sometimes if I need to. Well, we usually, if we put the honey into one of our bottling tanks, I'll usually then set it outside and let the bees finish cleaning it up, which there's not much left in there, but they'll clean it up, and then I bring them back in hot and soap water them, and occasionally we'll have to clean up the outside a little bit. They're usually not that dirty, but just to make them look presentable. Yeah, some of the buckets that we have will turn over, because if I sell a bucket of honey, I let the bucket go with it. So
I'll extract about 14 of those, about 700 pounds at a time, because I extract into my wax melter, and that's how much it'll hold. So then I let it settle. It's sitting there warm, just so it settles nicely, and it'll settle, and we'll strain it into the pail. So we can do that about 700 pounds at a time, which is kind of the pace of my extracting. That's about all I can do in a day because of that. I kind of wish it wasn't that much of a limitation, because I could extract a lot more than that in a day if it wasn't.
Yeah, and Brad, you're the only one that extracts your honey, correct?
Yeah, I usually don't have like my wife comes and pails the honey for me.
Oh, okay.
Like I really hate that part, but she kind of likes it, so she'll come out and pail the honey after I'm done for the day. But yeah, I'm doing all the extracting myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got a pretty nice line there of extraction that you.
Oh, I don't know. This is as old as I am. It's not as old as JW though, so it's
gosh,
pretty modern.
Yeah.
It's electric, so it's not that
That's
old.
a good thing.
No, it's a 40, 50-year-old Cowan and Capper and an old Kelly extractor about that old too, and it's a 33 frame extractor.
And
So
I think you've got that in your videos. Yeah,
that's about it. Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
He doesn't want you disrupting his hands in front of his face, right?
High five. There we go. So yeah, I can't complain. That is not my bottleneck. Getting it into the pail is my bottleneck. So I could go and spend a whole whack of money on a bigger extractor or something like that. It wouldn't speed me up at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the old Kelly just keeps trudging along. Boy, that thing.
They still make parts for that?
I don't know. Most of the parts on that thing, I think, are off the shelf. If you need bearings or anything.
Okay.
I did order a drive wheel. The drive system on it it's a plate on top. It's a big circular plate. It's about maybe, I don't know, 10 or 11 inches across. And the drive shaft comes across on there. And then there's a wheel. It's a fiber wheel that sits on the drive wheel, this drive plate. And then it's three speed. There's a lever that you can click into 3 different positions. As you move this fiber wheel closer to the center of the drive wheel, then the extractor goes faster. So that's a wear point, and it's getting down quite a bit. And I contacted my bee supply, and he said that there's a company that is actually making those, so he's going to get me one.
Oh, good.
Replace that, but it'll probably last the rest of my life. After that. Yeah, exactly. Melanie said that they just got an uncapper and extractor like mine. That's crazy. Old 33 Kelly.
Where did Dennis find that?
Oh, I don't remember. He told me. Hey, Melanie, maybe you can comment. I forget where Dennis picked that up from. I don't know if it was Georgia or where it was. He had a drive to go get it. He
sent me that this morning, and he's asking me about it, and I sent him the manual that I have for that uncapper, so he can get it all dialed in, and so it doesn't smash too many frames.
Yeah, I think he was a little concerned about that when he was talking to me about it. He didn't sound confident, like he wanted to keep it. And he said that I should have gone with him to talk him out of it. And I said, I don't know if that would have worked out that way. I kind of like equipment. I really do. It's very helpful to us. If you can get something that saves you amount of time and it'll earn its keep, I would probably be a guy that would purchase it.
Cowan, it saves time. I got it in a batch deal with a bunch of equipment, and so I tuned it up and made it work nice. And I'm glad I have it. It works nice. I was telling him though, I tweaked it, and I got it running pretty darn good. I said, but I still can't leave it unattended. I have to load it up with about 9 or 10 frames and watch it with my hand on the switch, right? I said, it's like a jealous girlfriend. You're standing there watching it and you're nice and attentive. It's fine.
Yeah.
Something else catches your attention, it's going to let you know. It's going to raise hell.
Well, there was another one that Dennis and Melanie were looking at when we went down there in September and visited them. But I guess he kind of drug his feet on it, kind of talked himself out of it a little bit, going back and forth. And it sold right when he was getting ready to pull the trigger on it.
Well, yeah, because he said something to me about it. And I said, hey, if you want to go, I'll take a drive with you, because I was down there at the time. I said, I'll take a drive with you. We can go look at this. I'll help you move it, pick it up, whatever has to be done.
And then he went to do it and it sold.
But this wasn't
Right.
a full line, much like what he has just
Yeah,
purchased.
yeah,
This
yeah.
was, I believe, just the automatic on camera.
Yeah, I think so.
It was the line itself.
Yeah.
September, y'all about due to go back, ain't you?
I would. I got other stuff I have to do for right now,
You
but
got to go visit JW.
yep.
I told him at lunch today because he was being a pill. So I told him I told him I was going to send him away for a week down to JW and then send him for another week after that straight to Melanie, and he could actually stay there 2 weeks and then on his way back stop by JW's house again for another week before he can come back home.
JW didn't seem thrilled by that idea. He thought it was too much time.
Oh, well. You're always welcome. You know that.
I appreciate that, buddy.
So Brian had a comment up here. If I can get it, find where it was. I was going to ask him something, but I don't
That one?
remember what it was. Well, not that one. Oh, you're about your cum honey. How much cum honey did you make this year, Brian? Because you said you're going to work on cum honey production next year.
Yeah, I had
What
to-
did you do this year, and how much do you want to do next year? Because I think how many boxes did we end up doing? 4 or 5 boxes this year?
Something like that.
But that was just our first year ever messing with comb honey.
And this is
like 4
8 frame.
like 4 or 5 of the
Correct.
individuals,
Each
or-
frame, we should be able to get 4 of the 4x4 comb pieces out of.
So we did 4 8-frame boxes. Is what we
Okay.
did.
So how many servings, how many individuals that you sell?
So
Were you making?
4 per frame
Yeah, and 8 frames in a
and
box.
8 frames in a box.
So best case scenario would be, what's that? 8 times 4, 30.
30. It's too late
32.
for math.
It's 32. So best case scenario, 32. Now that's as long as they all look presentable. You know, sometimes you get some there that
Probably average 25 to 30.
yeah, that's probably a safer bet.
Yeah,
What y'all gonna put them in?
I bought those the clear hard plastic cases.
Up here.
Yeah, no, they're in the car.
Okay.
The square ones? Are they
Yeah, the
square or
square
like clamshell?
Not the clamshell ones, the square ones, the nicer ones.
So how many
Don't be
boxes of
selling
that
all
did
that
you
stuff.
say?
That belongs to me. That's private. That's private property. That belongs to me.
Hey, come get them. Come get them.
So
What'd
what
you
did you
say,
say,
Brad?
Melissa? How many boxes of that did you make? So you make about 25, 30 a box. How many boxes?
It was either
so we-
4 or 5.
So we
Okay.
sell for $20 a box.
So you
And
produced
each-
100
You must have done something.
pieces.
So each box should produce 32 pieces
Yeah,
times $20.
yeah,
So 600, potentially $640 a box.
yeah, yeah.
Now, how big is your square? Are you honey?
4x4.
4
Right.
by 4?
But Brian sells 2x2s for $20 in Denver.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Still
Mine are
isn't
3
bad.
by 4. I'm getting $15.
Give me that cord. It's not charging on that thing.
Hey, when you guys make that, do you make it just strictly on standard frames? Do you put a starter strip and anything in them to get them?
So this year I did use it. Hold on, the battery's about ready to die. I gotta get this plugged in.
It was a shallow frame, but there's a gentleman in Tennessee. His name is Skipper Luttrell. I think you know who he is, right, JW?
I know of him. I don't know.
He
the
was
name.
at Nobby.
What he does is the frame is a shallow frame, but his top bar is much thinner. When you look at the frame like sideways, his top bar is much thinner, so that allows a little bit more space within the frame. So sometimes the bees will, as it gets closer to either the top bar or the bottom bar of the frame, they may taper it off a little bit, or
Yeah,
maybe a few
yeah.
cells are not filled. So you can take your 4x4 and move it up and down and have, I want to say roughly 3/4 of an inch, if I remember right, to kind of play with that comb cutter just a little bit, so you can get a more perfect or a nicer cut. And I got 80 frames from him, so I had 10 boxes of 8, but I was not able to get all those on our hives this year because it kind of a weird spring.
So I want to answer this. Well, I've got the number in my head right now. Carl asked, how much are they profiting? So we sell those 4x4s for $20. So potentially, if all of them look nice, a shallow box could get me $640. Now, if I do, those average about 11 ounces a square. So if this is just average, this isn't exact, obviously. When I figured the math up, if that was liquid honey per ounce, I would be making $264 in liquid honey. But because I'm doing it comb honey, would I say it was $640?
Almost 3 times.
So, I mean, of
Yeah.
course, there's money. Well, I mean, there'd be money in the bottles too for the liquid honey. Those cases are about $1.50 a piece.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
You know,
There's
those
a
cases
pile
aren't.
more work. with
They are
comb
more
honey.
work.
Yeah, that's right.
So
But
what
it's
do you
not
do?
horrible because if you think about it, the liquid honey, you have to uncap it and
So
extract
how do you
it
store those?
in the freezer.
Yeah.
In the deep freeze. So I mean, I guess there is electricity involved, but that deep freeze is
No, I'm just
running
saying.
anyway.
I'm
That
just-
freezer is running anyway.
I would say that because that's what I do. I got a big freezer in the honey house.
Yeah.
Full of it.
So all of our comb honey I store in the freezer.
Yep. I didn't have a good crop this year of comb honey. I usually produce 200 to 300 sections, I guess you call, for sale. And I don't know how many I did this time. Probably if I got 100, that would be maybe an overestimate. It was not good. I tried something a little different. It didn't work out for me.
Yeah. And I sell, so the ones that don't look nice, right? I cut those into 2x4s and I'll use those for my chunk honey. And I sell those in pint jars with liquid honey in it. And I sell those for $20 also.
You can put the open cells in the chunk honey.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
So I sell those for the 4x4 cut comb is $20 or the 1 pint, which ends up being 1 pound.
Do you freeze that as well?
Yeah.
Chunk honey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it. I've
But
made
a
chunk
little
honey
bit
only a
down.
couple times. It's sold really well, but I don't charge extra for it. But it sold really well. But I learned that granulation is an absolute enemy to chunk honey. So I'd make it up just like the day before. Maybe I was doing a market, and I'd take a dozen jars of chunk honey, and people just love it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
never
so the-
really thought to freeze it.
Yeah. So the chunk honey I sell for $20 in that pint jar. And then the 4x4 I sell for $20. And I'll take them out of the freezer like the night before a market so they can acclimate. Thank you. And then as soon as we get home from market, whatever doesn't sell goes straight back in the freezer.
Let me ask
Yeah.
a question. This is changing the subject a little bit. But on those people got those where they put those pint jars inside the hive and let the bees build comb honey up inside the pint jar. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. We do
How
that
you,
too.
When you extract that, how do you get any foreign substances? Let's put it that way. How you get that out?
So like the bees out, how do we get the bees out?
Yeah.
So the
I
first
stick my mouth over it and go, "Hey guys, come on out of there," and they do.
So you suck.
Yeah, they come out.
I-
And
I,
they come out.
well,
So-
I don't,
So the first year we did it was just an experiment, right? And we actually took each jar
Yeah.
and we
This is gonna sound so stupid. I wanted to get them off, and I'm like, "Hey, we need to do something because I don't want them hive beetles to start to cause a problem in there." So I basically took them all
We
off. It was late in the evening, not quite dark yet. And on the hood of my Chevy Silverado, I'm going,
We took all the
and I'm going like this, and I'm shaking them out
we shook
onto
them
the
all
hood of
out.
the truck like this. And I shook them all out.
And
So-
then afterwards, I'm thinking, you know what we could have done is just got an empty box and put a bee escape on top of it and let the bees just get out on their own.
No.
Like, that would have been the smart thing to do.
No. It was much better to shake him out of the hood of a Chevy Silverado. That was a much better plan. Much more professional too, if I might add.
Oh my God.
I was curious as to how you would get that. If you going to market that product, or you going to market that with that comb right in that jar,
Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah.
did. So
and then
that's how
add
we sold
liquid
it.
honey to it. Is that the way you
Yep.
market it?
Yep, and that stuff sold like so fast because it looks amazing because it's natural comb built in that jar. You know, we haven't touched it.
Mm.
You see
And
the
so
comb
people
where
are
they
just
attach the
fascinated
comb
by
to
it.
glass.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
I mean, it
people love.
looks
I know
amazing.
people love that kind of story. I had a little system one time. They don't make it anymore. It's called BioPack, and there's a company making a very similar system now. It's kind of a plastic frame that the bees build the comb and then you fold it up and snap it together.
Yeah,
So
those simple comb.
simple comb. Yeah, it's
I
very
got
much like
some
simple
up
comb.
here.
So I used this BioPack one time, and it worked maybe 3/4 of it, maybe 2/3 of it worked, and so I snapped these things together, took them to markets, and when I tell people, like I'd say, "Here, do you want to buy some comb honey?" and they'd kind of look at me like, "What in the world is that?" And when I would tell them that this is the container that was in the hive and the bees made the comb and put the honey in it and sealed it up in this container, nobody's ever touched it, their eyes just got big and they absolutely loved that story, right?
Mm.
So people would really love that kind of thing.
Yep.
The
So we
bees
had-
made it. I'd say the bees made it for you.
That's right.
In there. Yep. Simple.
I think when we did that last year was the first time, and I think I had maybe 20 jars of it, something like that.
And we got 12.
I don't know, something like that. But we were putting it at this gift shop in town, and I'd had a few, but the gift shop wanted more, and I only had a few jars left. So I'm like, okay, I'll go drop this off at the gift shop. Well, then this lady calls me. She's like, "Do you have any more of that comb honey?" I think I had just taken 4 or 5 jars, like the last of my jars up there. And I'm like, "No, I just took them to Red Cedar Inn is the name of the place." I go in town. She's like, "Okay, I'm going up there right now." She went up there that same day and bought every single one of those jars because she wanted them for Christmas gifts for friends and family.
Yeah.
At that day, I told Melissa, I'm like, you know what? She says, what? I said, you didn't charge enough.
Yeah.
She said, yep. And I asked one of our,
and I was charging $15 or $18 for it last year. This year I charged $20 for comb honey.
a guy in our
honey.
club said to me, he goes, "You guys left so much money on the table." And I'm like, well, this was an experiment for us. And he had told us, he goes, "You guys should be charging," he said, "at least 20, if not more than that." He goes, "People pay it." I'm like, well, this was a trial for us,
Oh, sure.
not a big deal.
Yeah.
It was no loss for us whatsoever.
Yeah. You gotta start and test the market,
Yes, sir. That's
It-
right.
Brian,
it's,
that's
just,
where-
it's a whole lot easier to bring prices down than it is to put them up, right?
That is exactly right.
So start high. That's always
Yep.
the sage advice is start high. And all new business owners, beekeepers are all like, it's like, well, I don't want to. No. You start high. It's well, I don't think it's worth. No. You start high.
Mhm.
You can always come down.
Well,
Yeah.
because we've been talking too about like different products and what we're pricing them. He's like, "You really need to raise your price on this, that, or the other." I'm like, "Well, I agree, but I'm not raising the prices until January because if I've been going to a market and that's what the prices have been, and then I go to a market next week and now the price is higher, but they bought that same product from me the week before, they'd be like, what's going
Yeah,
on?"
I
I'd
agree.
rather just do my price increase at the beginning of the
Do it
year.
season by season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can always have it. If you put a price on something that's $25 at a market and you stand there for a couple hours and it's not selling, have a sale.
Mhm.
Everything is 10% off or whatever, right?
Yeah. If you don't want to lug it home, right?
Have a sale.
Yeah. Hey, Joey, you brought those.
Did you go through puberty there?
My voice is all messed up. You brought
wonder
those
why.
out that you were showing. What'd you say, JW?
I just said I wonder why. I just a general comment. I don't make a big deal out
It's okay. You can. I have a tough skin.
of it.
Hey, Joey, you had brought to the screen those. I don't remember what they're called. Tell me about
Simple
those
Calm.
and your experience.
I hadn't used them yet. I bought them to use this year,
Mm-hmm.
but I was gonna put them in the hive when our tallow was gonna hit its flow, and
Yeah.
it all got washed off, so I didn't even get to put them in the box.
Hey, bring those back up again and show people. Some folks may not know much about those. And I don't have any experience with it, by the way. All I know is what I've been told, which is very little. But I'll tell you, one person who's on here that has used them would be Melanie and Dennis Cruz. I know for a fact they have. If she's still on here, maybe she'd be interested in and either
Posting something
coming
out.
on or commenting on those particular.
It's Simple Calm.
Yeah, you have to put that whole thing and fold it over and put it inside of a frame, correct?
It folds over. It folds over this way, I think. And the bees work on one side, filling that in.
Mm-hmm.
You should wax that, I think, right?
Yeah, you have to wax it. They
Yeah.
recommend just making a block of your wax and just scraping it on there, or you can brush it on.
I brushed some on my Biopacks and it worked quite well.
Once you pull it out, you just fold it this way and close them all up. It's actually just one-sided. That way you're not selling a real thick comb. You're selling.
It's a half comb. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much all the same, you know.
I wonder what those weigh out at when you're done. If that's maybe 5 ounces or 6 ounces.
You know what? I don't even know.
That much.
No.
I doubt they'd be even that much because a cut comb, 4x4 cut comb is 10 out between 10 and 12 ounces.
Okay.
Well,
Oh, okay. My 3x4s can go anywhere up to a pound. Some of them are a little more than a pound.
Yeah, I've heard Malcolm brings up. He uses the hog halves. I don't know much about them, but I've seen a couple of things and heard people talk a little bit about the hog halves. So I don't.
now I can't
Somehow I
remember.
think that's what I should be using. I've never used
Melanie
it.
might know, but there's only certain frames that this will fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Simple Comb sells a frame for it, and seem like it might be Man Lakes that they'll fit in because they got the wider groove. But y'all may know more than that about that.
No,
than
I
me.
don't know anything about it, honestly.
Me neither.
Originally, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Joey, and I could be wrong, I thought those products debuted in Slidell.
That was the first.
Last
That's the
year.
first time I saw them.
That's the first time I saw them myself too. So
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. So they hadn't been out long, but it seems the different remarks that I've heard of people talking about those, it's very much a love or a hate relationship with those.
Could be.
I think they're hard to get into the frames and get them situated.
Oh, Dennis was pretty frustrated.
well,
with
Melanie
that, I
said
believe.
he about lost his religion.
Yep. And Dennis is a pretty calm, cool, and collected individual. So
Now, Bruce's bees, he's got a video out on using them.
what was his experience like? You recall?
For the first time, he did pretty good. He had a lot of skips on some of them. You know, I don't know if it was not leaving them in there long enough or might have missed the flow a little bit or something, but he did get several though.
Melissa and I have a bunch of the
Ross rounds.
Ross rounds.
Yeah.
Somebody gifted to me a large tote of the plastic rings. What else was there in there? The cases.
The cases, the rings, and that's it. They didn't have the box.
Yep.
Because you have to have a special. Oh, and the frames, but not the box. And you can't just buy the box anywhere. So we've just had all these Ross rounds for years.
Mhm.
And then Saracel, a few years ago, started making those frames that you could put the Ross round frames into, and then put it in like your deep box.
I thought there were adapters that went on the ends.
That's what it is.
Yeah, so you can put them into a regular
And
box.
but I haven't had time to mess with them or try it out. So that was on the agenda this year, but I just didn't have time. So it will be on the agenda next year.
Mm-hmm. It's stuff for us.
That's
is
a
a
good
little bit of a
point right
trial.
there. You need to put them on top of a.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any of that
Alright.
comb honey has to be on a super strong
Mm-hmm.
colony.
Strong
With a
hive,
really
strong
good-
flow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be on the agenda for next year to up our comb honey production and use those Ross rounds.
I sell some comb to customers. A lot of my comb I've gotten in with a business. This girl started a charcuterie business
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
in 2020 when everything was shut down. She started it for pickup and delivery kind of thing, and then she opened a storefront a little while ago. So she buys most of my comb now for her business. Works out really well.
Good.
You know what I
So-
always find funny is when we're doing markets and little kids will come up and buy.
That's nice, Joey.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That's nice.
That's a deep frame.
Is that foundationless?
Yep.
Wow,
Wow.
I'm surprised it
Oh.
didn't collapse.
It was just happenstance.
Wow. Is there any supports, wires, or anything in that?
Nothing.
Wow.
Holy
Oh, that's a
cow.
good thing.
Better be careful with
Time
that
it
one.
all collapsed on me.
Yeah. Don't damage that. There's some money in that frame right there.
Night
Yeah.
barn will be.
You could potentially get. Let's see. Help me out here, Brad. You should be able to get 2 4x4s stacked on top of each other. Is that correct? I believe that's correct.
I do some deeps with a divider, a thin wood divider in the center, and I get a 3-inch on each side.
Okay.
So I'll get 4. I'll get 4 along and 2 high. So I'll get
Okay.
8 sections out of that. So that's pretty good because that's 8 sections. That's $120 for that one frame.
Sure.
Is that what you use, Joey?
Well, I bought them to use them,
Yeah,
but we still, what little bit we do, we still cut it with a knife.
yeah.
Mhm.
I bought those too, but they're too big for the trays at the B supply
Yeah.
sell.
And Man Lake used to be good about telling you if you had something that was mismatched. I ordered one of these or this one first, and then this one with clamshells, but this won't fit in a clamshell.
Mm.
I think you got to go like what, 3 3.25, maybe 3.5, something like that.
Yeah, I cut
With
mine
a-
all with a knife too.
Yeah.
I'd lay the frame down on a grate. I've got a big giant cookie sheet with a kind of a cookie rack on there. I'll lay the frame down. I just cut the comb out of the frame, take the frame away, and then I can cut up the comb with the knife and put it in the trays.
I'm telling you, that Pierce comb cutter,
Yeah,
that thing is amazing.
yeah.
Like Brian did a video on it a while back, and there is a little bit of a learning curve, but that thing is like, I mean, it just is so fast. It's great.
I really covet those.
But yeah,
Brad, do you have one?
No, I just use a knife.
Okay.
but
I'm
that
just using a
those
knife.
Pierce cutters are, I mean, it's like
I line up my tray. I take my empty tray, and I line it up on the comb, and I just eyeball it and cut the comb, and then
yeah.
so it's really time consuming.
Now
I've got a question.
I will
please.
say that Pierce cutter is not going to win you any honey shows, though. But for as far as productivity, that's amazing.
Yeah. What's up, JW?
Enlighten an old man. What is security or whatever you said? What is that?
What's a what?
Security or Melanie said it also. What is that?
Melanie,
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie.
Our
Oh,
charcuterie
charcuterie.
board.
Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, Lee's
It's
gone.
it's
We need to
food
pull up
art.
It's what?
Somebody
It's
pull up a
it's
charcuterie board.
it's
In
food
order to
art.
say charcuterie, you have to kind of hold your pinky up in the air when you say
Yeah, yeah. It's
that. I think
Like
that.
you drinking tea?
Yes, sir.
it's
Uh,
finger food, and
That's
it's they can make a plate, and sometimes they'll take a whole boardroom table and they'll cover it.
Well,
It's
I do
all
that every day. I eat raw
yeah,
bacon.
I'm
and
sure you
stuff
do.
like
But it's a work of art. It's something to see. You know, it's just beautiful. A lot of cold cuts, cheeses,
Mhm.
grapes,
Okay.
different fruits, and
Yeah.
breads and crackers and all kinds of things. And
Okay, I got you.
it was
Yeah,
it was
I never-
actually during
I'm
the
not
shutdowns.
talented
shutdowns.
enough to bring it up on the screen.
That was a new terminology
There.
for me. I got
Yeah,
you.
that's
There,
That's it.
JW.
what you call
My
that.
mouth disappeared.
yeah.
There,
And it's
JW.
just delicious. It's just beautiful.
Something like
That's a
that.
little bit Rudy Snooty for the old man. I'd say that.
It's an
I knew you were
experience.
going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
See, Rudy Snooty for me.
So I forget how I contacted her, whether she ordered from me or I contacted her. In 2020, everything was closed down, and I was making all these deliveries to the city, and so I got her buying it, and she experimented, learning how to use it and whatnot. So she's become my biggest customer for it, and I really appreciate it.
There,
loved
Brian says, right, it's a fancy food tray. That's what it
Or
is.
food art.
Cheese and crackers and salami, millennial style. That's exactly it.
Last year for Melissa's family, her Melissa's mom's side of the family Christmas, the theme was charcuterie, and so I like a little bit of competition, right? I don't mind it at all. But so there's a gentleman who we have gone to markets with who makes very, very nice cutting boards, and he also has these smaller cutting boards that have a little wire cutter so you can cut cheeses like on site or what have you. And so I told Melissa, I'm like, charcuterie, I'm like, we got that. And I'm like, I have an idea. We went to the store and I probably spent, I'm going to say between the nice crackers that we bought and the cheeses and such, because we used cheese, crackers. I can't remember what else there was. And then we used some of our honey and also our cut comb. And I took it there. I probably had $100 worth of cheese on that charcuterie board. And I actually had to buy the board too, because I wanted something very specific. I know JW was rolling his eyes and laughing at me.
Tom likes to be special in case y'all haven't figured that out yet.
So I went and bought this board from him and he gave me a really good deal. And I had these cabinet handles that I mounted to it. So it was like a tray, right?
Yep.
We lined it all out and set it all out. And hey, we won.
We won.
We won.
We didn't get anything for winning, but we won.
We got bragging rights. There was some value there.
I've got something to share with you.
If you ever want to improve the looks on your trays, when you do that, I'm keeping my possum tails and coon tails and stuff like that.
Oh, good.
You need me to bring that up, Brad?
Sure, I'll share with the group. This is my customer, kind of the work she does. She's just a real artist. You know,
That is
she's
amazing.
It's
really good at this.
Bouquet.
Yeah. Yeah. A meat
I'm
bouquet.
assuming I'm assuming those flowers are made out of meat or something. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
they're meat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That looks
and
really good.
Yeah, she's good. That's her there. That's Cassandra.
Yeah, that
Wow.
looks like
That's the food artist.
that looks like something I might go for. I'm talking about the
Wait,
producing that product now.
I had to move on. I don't want to
Clarify that, please.
we'll get JW too worked up. But so you see this table, like it's just incredible. Some of the stuff she does.
That is, but that's a new one on me.
That's pretty
My
spectacular.
wife gets
No.
stuff like that for like Thanksgiving and stuff, but I just call them meat trays or
Yeah.
something silly.
Can you see my pointer
Well,
at
now-
all?
now you can be fancy and call it a charcuterie board.
So if you can see my pointer, you can see the honeycomb at the top.
Yep.
That's my
Oh,
that's
yeah.
my honeycomb right there.
Very nice.
Yeah. She does Some pretty amazing work. That's her little shop she has there.
That's a really nice decorated place too.
She's really made see the honey jars here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Guess whose
think you
honey
showed
jars those
some
are?
of those on
those
on
must be
one of
Brad's.
the other chats. I don't
That's
know.
mine.
Back in the past, I've seen those. I've seen that lady before. Now that you bring that up, but
Have you?
I think you surely would have had to post it on a previous
Maybe.
chat in the last year or two.
Well, there might have been Facebook or something. She puts a lot of stuff on Facebook. I'm
Okay.
going to deliver there on Tuesday, so I'll see her again. Yeah.
But,
So anyway,
see how you never get too old to learn something. Well, I didn't know that. I thought that was called.
and her name of her company. I don't know if you caught it. I didn't point it out. It's the art is charcuterie. Her company, her name is Charcuterie. So it brings more into, something to experience with your friends and your family, something to share with people. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Malcolm, you must be a hick too, Malcolm. I'm sorry.
You had a
I'm
couple
not
of
a hick.
Yeah. One of
I
my
like
favorite
it when
charcuterie
people
board is
ask-
the standing rib roast on it. That's right.
I like when people ask at market, they see the comb honey, like, what are you supposed to do with that? I'm like, eat it.
Yeah, it's kind of like buckwheat to me. It's either love it or hate it, because it's a
Yeah.
different experience. And when you look at it, you think, oh, it's made in a nice sugary thing, and then you
Mhm.
bite into it, and it's actually wax.
Yeah.
So, if somebody's going into it for the first time, there was a few years ago, was it about 3 years ago, 4 years ago? I think it's about 3. There was somebody on TikTok or something. They've got these people on these social medias, and what they do is they eat food and have the microphone right at their mouth so you
Oh,
can
yeah.
actually hear the sounds of eating the food.
Uh-huh.
Oh, come
And
on.
so there was this one really popular girl. She got some comb honey and she ate it, and it was smack, 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 and it was running all over the place and everything. Well, she sold more comb honey for me than anything. The markets, all of the teenagers were coming up and all the kids were coming up. Do you have
Some
comb
weird
honey?
comb honey fetish.
I have comb honey. It's on special, $25 a square.
Yeah.
I didn't charge them extra, but I could have.
Hey, you should have.
They really wanted. They were just lined up getting the comb honey. It was so funny.
But when people ask that, it kind of, we were talking earlier about like your knowledge of all things bees when you're talking to customers, and they'll buy stuff from you because they think you're so knowledgeable and whatnot. And when they ask about like, what do you do with this? And then it kind of sometimes leads into the conversation of like, well, everything that the bees produce in a hive is a consumable. And then, you kind of like start talking about everything. And I'll even tell them like, even if you want to eat the bees, I guess you can eat those also. Like it's not recommended, but good protein source.
Spicy.
Yeah.
I like to
I'll
talk to people about the natural, like to say you want natural honey. There is
Right.
no more natural honey because
Exactly.
bees put it in the little cells and they capped it over with the wax that you can see, and the honey is in there, and nobody's ever touched that honey. And it
Exactly.
comes
That's
to
what I tell
you,
'em.
and the bees made it for you, and you can buy it and eat it.
I keep getting asked every year, do I have any chunked honey? I've been thinking about starting to do that. Put the chunk honey in the jar. But I keep thinking back, I used to fry turkeys every like Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'd fry all the turkeys for work. And every time I'd fry turkeys, I had several people ask me, you didn't save a leg? Because I'd always pull everything off the bone and have it all on a pretty platter. You should have saved some of them legs. For about 2 years, I did this for 27. For about 2 or 3 years, I heard that every time we had a meal. So one year, I finally saved all the legs and put 2 legs on every tray. I brought every leg back. When we left, nobody ate the legs. I brought every leg back to our department. So I said I'd never keep the turkey legs whole again. But I kind of feel that way about the chunk honey. If I waste my time, it's people that have been saying they want it, gonna really buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make a few. Make half dozen and see how it goes.
Yeah.
I've done that with a lot of stuff. Some of it's still here. You know.
Well, I usually like this one right here. I didn't do it this year. I did some, but I didn't do these. But I usually cut a few up and just give that to my customers. I don't sell it to them. I just give it to somebody that buys pretty regular from me.
Yeah.
Not everybody that buys, but the ones that buy a lot from me. And when they come get some, I'll hand them one of them, you know.
Yeah, that's a nice little bonus. I like doing that.
Yeah.
I'm honestly like we never really got a lot of requests for it until like the last year. And I'm honestly surprised with how much comb honey we've sold this year.
Yeah.
Good.
And a lot I do have to say that quite a good portion of it is just people that are curious about it. And then like so they buy it, you know, like, oh well, let's try this. And then but then like, or it'll be older people because that's how they used to eat honey when they were younger. So they want to buy it that way. And then, like I said before, we've had kids, and by kids, I mean like 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids coming up to our table buying a case of comb honey. And funny story is we did this rodeo earlier this summer, and these two boys, and they couldn't have been more than 11 years old, come up to our table, and he's like, I want to buy this comb honey. And he had $20 and he handed it to me. Well, he had his little friend with him, and they were kind of buying like, I don't know, some honey straws or something too. Well, we had just been talking to a couple of our friends had stopped by the table and had been talking to us, and they kind of moved over to the side and were talking to some other people that they knew. Well, I guess they had seen these boys, and I didn't know these boys. They just showed up at our table, and our friend comes over and he hands them some money, and he's like, here, if you guys want to get something else at this table, go ahead and get something at this table. And they bought another case of this comb honey. So each of those boys bought a case of comb honey.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at them and I'm like, do you know, like, is that like, because I knew it wasn't his kid because these are friends of ours.
His name is Aaron.
But I didn't know if like maybe they were like his friends' kids or maybe nephews or something like that. And they're like, no, we don't know him. So he just gave these boys $20 just to, and they didn't just take it and run off like you'd think kids would, you know what I mean? No, they bought another case of comb honey.
Yeah.
So they each could have one.
Those are some sophisticated kids, I'll tell you.
Well, when I was a kid, that's what we used. My dad, you know, had beehives, and we'd take the comb. That was our chewing gum, you know. And also back then, they had the little old paraffin deals that had the liquid in them. I don't know, flavored water inside the little paraffin deals. And you chewed those up, and you got flavored water out of them. But we use comb honey as more like chewing gum, you know.
Yeah.
And like I told you, Melissa, when I got that off of you, or attempted to get it for you, stole it back from me, that I was getting some for some of the older guys that was around me. They're the ones that asked me for comb honey is older folks, the young couple. The young people, I don't think they know what it is. So
I've got an older guy comes in here and he'll buy a great big box of it. His older guy, he's almost old enough to be JW's son. He's so old. But
he must be about 30.
Yeah, right.
Melanie, that would be an interesting experiment to do because I don't know. Because according to what Bob was saying earlier today, the Tupelo honey doesn't crystallize from what he says. But if it's not pure Tupelo honey, then maybe there's enough of that different sugar content in it that it would crystallize. I don't know. It would be an interesting experiment to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can mix it with something.
Yeah.
A lot of my honey doesn't crystallize readily either, and it drives my creaming guy crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He'll say, "I had to put so much seed in that to make it set,"
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
but he manages. So I don't know if that's if it's an unlimited scale that you can cream anything. Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe instead of doing a ratio of 1 to 8 or 10 or whatever you're doing, maybe you have to knock that down to like, I don't know, 1 to 5, 1 to 6. I don't know.
You know,
Yeah, well, he typically uses 15% seed, but
Okay.
so that's 1 to, I don't know, you can do the ratio, but sometimes he says, "Boy, that stuff, I had to put so much seed in it and mix it for so much longer and whatnot. It was difficult." But he manages. He makes some nice stuff.
what I started saying, I know I'm being repetitive from previous chats, but I have never had any honey. I won't say never, rarely have any honey that ever crystallizes. I
Really.
don't know what it is. I try to get rid of it ASAP, of course. But I've kept it up to 2 years, and I've got my first one to ever crystallize. Now I don't know why. I guess the area or but I have no problem with crystallization whatsoever.
Malcolm, where are you at, and what kind of honey do you have?
He said he's in Oklahoma.
Oh, Oklahoma.
He said the green side is what he said.
I missed that up there.
He said around the Tulsa area is where way I understood Malcolm, because I got a lot of family in western Oklahoma.
Mhm.
He's talking about the green side. That's like Illinois and Missouri. The green side's in Illinois. All the rock hicks and clutter and stuff is over on the Missouri side.
JW, suppose I could come out there and build a house by you to go to the green side?
That'll work.
Yeah. Will you deed me some land?
That'll work. I'm easy.
Yeah. I'd probably be able to get by with like 1,000 acres, I think.
You have to take all the animals.
Take all the raccoons and
Yeah.
possums.
All right, no problem. You give me 1,000 acres, I'll take care of the
That's the
animal
land
problem.
he's going to give you, the one that he's been releasing all these possums and raccoons on.
Yeah, probably. You won't be
I
able to
got
put beans
most of
there.
the property up there on the as the river bottom. So
What you do is you move down there and you trap them and put them back on JW's property.
Hey, now you're talking.
anyway, it is what it is. But that, people talk about crystallization, and you guys in particular, don't you say that canola honey crystallizes pretty quickly, Brad?
Yes, it does.
But I don't know. I have a lot of legumes around me as for the clover and the alfalfa, etc. But I never have a crystallization problem with my honey.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, the clover and whatnot, and that's what I have, and so that's why I have one little edge, because I can have more of a raw honey that's actually liquid, which most
Sure.
people around here can't, because there's going to be canola in it and it won't stay liquid, not for long. I actually last year I had 1 yard of honey. I harvested it. I put it in the pails. It sat it sits in the bee barn, really. And so that's 4 degrees Celsius, which is a terrible temperature to try and store liquid honey. And it was liquid all the way into the next summer. The pails were still, I could squeeze the pails. They were not granulated. So it was really nice sweet clover honey, I think, is what was in there.
I think I've got one pail that's maybe 3 years old. That's still liquid for.
Yeah. I keep jars. I keep little 1 pound jars of different years of honey. And I have one here that was a sweet clover honey. I think it was 2016 maybe. And it took about a year and a half to granulate, and I melted it again, and I don't think it's granulated since. It's still liquid. Well, it's kind of
That's
crazy.
sweet clover, you're thinking? Sweet
I
clover.
believe it's sweet clover. Yeah.
Oh, Now,
Which, in
I've
my
had some
opinion,
old
is a
timers
nice.
always told me that the sweet clover would granulate a lot sooner than some of the other.
Oh yeah.
Just around
Well,
this area.
I
don't know.
didn't test it. I just could see what's growing in the fields. So
Sure.
that's the way I go by that. And it was so clear, very clear, almost like a jar of water when I harvested.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
I actually planted some sweet clover for my bees last year, but I didn't get a very good stand on it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm transferring some old cattle pastures into bee forage type, production. My too.
Sometimes around here, there's so many seeds in the ground that never germinate. You can just work up a piece of land and it'll come up 5 feet of sweet clover.
Volunteer, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you do that in this country, you get a really good stand of cockleburs.
I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
We'll either get clover or we'll get thistles.
Yeah. Well, we get some. We call it. My dad. We call it a Canadian thistle. He'd make me get out there with a round nose shovel and cut all that stuff off.
Yeah, we have Canada thistle here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joey's eating honey.
Yep.
See that?
West Virginia.
West Virginia had it.
Yep.
I didn't even know they had honeybees in West Virginia.
Yeah, they don't. They stop at the state line. Yeah, I always like trying honeys from different areas, different states, different areas. Just amazes me the different floral taste
I know.
you will get out of these honeys. It's boggling to me sometimes.
Is Carl on here?
Carl wasn't here.
He was.
About an hour ago, he posted a picture of his espresso infused rock creamed honey. He was talking about that last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still in.
I just saw it on Facebook.
He might have fell asleep.
Or
Carl, you awake?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this chat tonight, guys.
That was fun.
I feel like I learned a lot today,
I learn something every time.
Yeah.
I learned how you say that again? Charcuteries?
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie. Okay.
With the C.
Please put your finger up in the air when you say it, though, JW.
Yeah, charcuterie.
I'm pretty good at that. That's why I drink my tea.
Yes, sir. I figured that.
1 billion charcuteries.
That's right.
That's how he does when he drinks those monster coffee.
Oh,
drinks.
yeah. Yep. I knew he was big time when he told me that.
That's what Red Skelton used to say. He says you have to hold that out, so if you slip, you don't go to your elbow.
Oh, there he is. Tell us about your Carl. Tell us about your espresso infused creamed honey. I just saw your picture on Facebook.
Did I jump in on the tea party?
On the tea party.
Yep, you sure did.
Those folks out toward the East Coast, it's starting to get a little late. It's 11:30 almost out there. We've been on here, Joey, almost 3 hours?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, just
Coming up on 3.
Just about to the end of it.
Carl says it's awesome. Try it. Can you send some through the computer screen? We'd all like a sample.
Yeah, email it as JW.
Email it.
Yeah,
Email
email us all a sample real quick so we can have a
Well, I do
discussion.
my samples. I email them to folks.
How amazing would that be if you could do that? We're all talking about this. I'm like, hey, I want you all to try my creamed honey. I'm sending out, drop all your emails in here. I'm going to email it all out to you, right? And everyone's like, oh, this is great. This is horrible. This is whatever. I'd send out all the bourbon barrel stuff, the stuff that JW likes the best. Get get his input.
I
That
tell you,
makes me my skin creep when you talk.
so today I have to brag on Andrew, our one son today,
Our son Andrew.
and his girlfriend Grace. So we are at this conference, and so the original bourbon barrel that we got, we sourced from a bourbon shop in the St. Louis area, and he didn't charge us for it. He just wanted the barrel back when we were done because he was going to use it and put bourbon in it or something.
He was going to use it in reverse.
Yeah. So he called me a few months ago and asked if we wanted to participate in this festival that he was going to do. And I'm like, yeah, we'd love to. And then I realized it was the same date as this conference. Like, well, one of the boys is going to have to do this festival for us. So Isaac was busy. So Andrew's like, yeah, me and Grace will do it. And both boys are very proficient, and they're not interested in bees, but they're very knowledgeable in all things bees, just from being around us and listening to our conversations
And helping out.
and helping out. And they help extract, they help with all the processes. And they've done markets with us, and they've done markets by themselves. And they can talk to customers. They're very good. They're very good conversationalists. Anyway.
Imagine that.
I know. So anyway, Grace and Andrew had to do this market. Well, like we talked about before, we needed this bourbon barrel honey for this particular market because it's for this bourbon store. And the honey at the beginning of the week, the moisture level was like 21.6, something like that, too high. So we've had it in the bottling tank with the warmer on, the lid off, and a dehumidifier in there, trying to bring this moisture level down. So it got down low enough, but it wasn't low enough before we had to leave. Mm-hmm. So Andrew had to check it, test the moisture, and bottle and label this bourbon honey.
I told him to go downstairs and stir it so we could turn over that, can make sure that we can aerify it a little bit to get any of that.
Get the moisture equalized.
Yeah, equalize it within that tank.
So we had to trust that he would do all this, and he did. And then him and Grace did the market today, and they did extremely well, selling at this market today. So I have to brag on him up for a minute that how well he did. Him and Grace, I mean, they had to load everything up in the truck, set everything up themselves, and sell all day long.
Yeah. It would behoove him to sell more because he gets a percentage of that.
Yeah, so. They get 25% of whatever they sell.
Carl, if you come to Nobby, bring some of that awesome stuff with you. I want to try some of the espresso. I'm kind of a monster coffee drink professional taster.
It's Carl, are you coming to Nobby?
Yeah, Carl. We need to get Brad to fly down here, join in on this Nobby event.
I'm gonna have to take up a collection.
Yeah. The guy sitting to your left, he's got a bucket full, probably buried all over the place in that farm. I'll go dig one up for you, Brad.
I believe it.
Yeah. Dig up one of them buckets.
Well, you could fly out of right there where you're at there and come directly into Louisville, but surely wouldn't be over that awfully much. I might just volunteer to pay it if you show up.
Oh, goodness. Don't say that.
Would you pay mine to go over there too?
No.
I knew that was coming.
Carl, did you see Brian's question? He wanted to know how you flavored your espresso. How'd you add the espresso?
Yeah, because Brian does one as well.
Melanie, does that mean you guys are coming to Nobby? If you're gonna
ship
in Brad's ticket,
we're gonna get you down there. You might have said too much.
Yes.
Don't start that.
See, Brad, you're gonna be locked into this before you know it, Brad. I'm just telling you.
I'm gonna be the biggest charity case in.
No, it's not a charity case. It's not a matter of being a charity case. It's just a matter of.
This is gonna be a big family reunion.
Appreciate your friendship and your commentaries.
That's right.
Well, I'm touched. I'm speechless. What can I say?
Stay in
All
touch. Let me know. We might make this all happen.
Mm-hmm.
We're about 30 seconds from 3 hours.
How about that? How about that?
Yeah. I think we're going to bring it to a close.
I hear you.
I'm going to go ahead and close the chat down. I appreciate everybody coming in the chat and all of you coming in the studio.
Good night, y'all.
See
Y'all
everybody.
hang in there. We'll go
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.